At the Magic University-affiliated First High School's opening ceremony for freshmen, Miyuki grumbles about the fact that her brother was made a Course 2, when he should have been the one to make it to Course 1 in her place. Not to mention that he had scored the highest in the school entrance exam, but she was still the one selected as the freshman representative. Tatsuya just gives her a Boku no Hero pep talk, telling her not to worry about him, and just tries to do her best in her speech. Convinced, Miyuki then heads off to prepare for the speech. After Miyuki leaves, Tatsuya overhears some students call him a weed, since he's not a Course 1 student. He then bumps into Saigusa Mayumi, the school council president, who seems oddly interested in him despite his class status. She asks his name, and as soon as he replies, Nakaju Azusa, another student council member, shows up to call Mayumi for rehearsals. Tatsuya uses the distraction to bail. Proceeding to the school auditorium, Tatsuya can't help but notice the huge border between the Course 1 elite and the Course 2 underdogs, which are referred to as blooms and weeds, respectively. After finding a seat, he gets approached by Shibata Mizuki and Chiba Erika, who request to sit beside him through the ceremony. The ceremony kicks off, and the student council president and Miyuki give their designated speeches. After the ceremony, Mizuki correctly guesses that the freshman representative is Tatsuya's sister, thanks to their matching auras. This makes Tatsuya realize that Mizuki has oversensitivity to spirit particle emission and might see through his secrets. This makes him cautious. Miyuki then shows up and tries to get familiar with his new company by introducing herself. Mizuki and Erika in return introduce themselves before taking their leave. Back home, Miyuki tells Tatsuya she got a call from their parents, congratulating her for starting high school. She asks if they reached out to him too, and he tells her they didn't. This upsets Miyuki, and emotions set off her magic, turning the kitchen into Sub-Zero's castle. But Tatsuya manages to calm her down and explains that it only makes sense for them not to reach out to him, considering he had turned down their proposal to work in their company and had chosen to go to high school instead. Princess Elsa then proceeds to let it go. Early the next morning, Tatsuya and his sister head to a ninja dojo. On getting there, Tatsuya is surrounded by a bunch of ninjas who immediately start attacking him. Miyuki, on the other hand, is approached by Mr. Yakumo, their sensei, who gets too excited about her school uniform. He tries to touch her, but Tatsuya, who happens to have knocked out all the ninjas that approached him, suddenly shows up and starts attacking him. They go Naruto and Sasuke for a while, until Mr. Yakumo proves his superiority. Miyuki uses a magic spell to clean their clothes, and they both head off to school. Later on in class, a new dude who wants to be familiar with the cool kids approaches Tatsuya, Mizuki, and Erika, and introduces himself as Saijo Leonhardt, Leo for short. They all get acquainted, but Erika and Leo seem to get on each other's nerves. Signs of good friendship, I guess. During lunch break, Leo joins the cool trio at the Course 2 table to have lunch. Miyuki then shows up and asks to join in, but a group of Course 1 students appear and try to stop her by telling her there are lots of other places to sit instead of sitting with a bunch of weeds. This specifically triggers Leo, and he begins to flare up at them. To avoid more drama on his first day after matriculation, Tatsuya tells Miyuki he's done eating and makes his exit. After school hours, Miyuki wants to head home with her brother, but her classmates seem to be strict about differentiating the blooms from the weeds regardless. Mizuki questions the Course 1 student's self-declared superiority, prompting one of them to cast an attack spell. Leo charges back at the student, but before the student can finish casting, Erika displays overwhelming combat abilities by hitting his hand with a baton and deflecting his attack in a split second. Chaos ensues, and in Course 1, other students start casting their magic spells. Miyuki panics at the sight, but Tatsuya assures her not to worry. Mayumi suddenly shows up with Watanabe Mari, the head of the disciplinary committee, and stops it. Tatsuya quickly spins a tale to cover up the whole situation, claiming that they were just in a friendly spa and that it was nothing serious. Mari still seems adamant about letting the case go, but Mayumi and Miyuki join in the persuasion, so she lets it slide. She asks Tatsuya his name before taking her leave, with Mayumi following her promptly. The Course 1 students then leave angrily afterwards. While Tatsuya and Miyuki are about to head home with the other Course 2 students, Honoka and Shizuku, two girls caught up in the whole incident, approach them and apologize deeply for the actions of their classmates with a mix of embarrassment. They then offer to walk home with them as proof of their alliance. They converse as they head home, but their conversation suddenly takes an intriguing nerd turn. They delve into the technical aspects of Tatsuya's impressive skills in maintaining Mayuki's CAD. Erika then reveals her baton to also be a CAD, cleverly disguised as an innocuous weapon. This revelation prompts more questions from her newly formed squad on their way home. The next morning, Mayumi approaches the siblings on their way to school and tells them she'd like to have a brief meeting with them later in the day. During lunch break, Tatsuya and Miyuki head to the student council room and meet the council board seated. Mayumi tells them to have a seat with them, which they do. She then proceeds to reintroduce all the student council body members one by one to the siblings. She proceeds to tell them that in their school, only the student council president is selected by election, the other officers are chosen or dismissed by the president. Having said that, she then throws an invitation to Miyuki to join the student council. Miyuki hesitates for a moment and then inquires about her brother's potential participation, stating that he would be a better pick than her. Mayumi sighs and tells her that even if her claim happens to be true, a significant barrier still holds. Course 2 students are typically prohibited from joining the student council. Undeterred by this limitation, Mari extends an alternative offer to Tatsuya, inviting him to join the Public Morals Committee, and all the council members agree to it. Despite Tatsuya's initial protests and reservations, he is persuaded to join against his will. In class, the Course 2 students are engaged in a practical exercise, using magic to move a cart back and forth. Tatsuya's progress in this task is slow, even among his fellow Course 2 students. Glad to know Bro has a flaw too. This lack of speed, coupled with his reservations about his abilities, makes him consider declining the invitation to the committee. After school hours, Tatsuya and Miyuki find themselves back in the student council room. The final member of the council, Vice President Hattori, makes a grand entrance. He warmly introduces himself to Miyuki, but completely ghosts Tatsuya. When Mari suggests a tour of the Public Morals Committee headquarters for Tatsuya, Hattori interjects, vehemently protesting the idea of Tatsuya joining the committee. Mari tries to convince him to give Tatsuya a try, but the hard-boiled vice president is hell-bent on protocol. Miyuki cuts in her brother's defense, and tells him that the only reason Tatsuya's practical test scores were subpar is because his skills were incompatible with the methods of assessment. She then goes ahead to announce that Tatsuya would never lose to anyone in a battle, and this leads to an unexpected turn of events. Tatsuya gets challenged to a duel by Hattori. The duel is set up with Mari acting as the arbiter, and the other student council members eagerly observing. Hattori, confident in his superior practical magic skills, plans to swiftly incapacitate Tatsuya with a movement-type spell. However, once the duel begins, Tatsuya defies expectations. He moves with surprising speed and precision, swiftly maneuvering behind Hattori and taking him out in one deft move. The entire student council body is completely shocked by this outcome. Well, all except Miyuki, who is well aware of her brother's combat ability. Mari asks Tatsuya if he declared a self-acceleration spell to pull the move he used to knock out Hattori, but he replies that it wasn't magic, but a bona fide physical technique that he had learned from Yakumo Kokonoe, his sensei. He adds that he used his ninjutsu skills to slip up behind Hattori, and then, for the grand finale, he unleashed a basic oscillation spell called Compound Waves that essentially made Hanzu see pink elephants and rainbows. Ichara then deduces that it wasn't just any spell casting, but he had used his Silverhorn CAD's loop casting feature, coupled with some brain-busting multivariable processing, to knock Hanzu flat on his back. After all that, Tatsuya concludes that the school's entrance practical exam was about as good at evaluating his real skills as a fish is at climbing trees, since multivariable spells aren't even on the grading radar. Just then, Hattori wakes up from Wonderland and apologizes to Miyuki for speaking rudely to her brother before glaring at Tatsuya and heading out without saying a word. After witnessing his monstrous abilities firsthand, the student council members officially welcome Tatsuya on board. Tatsuya gets taken to the disciplinary committee room and is introduced to Tatsumi Kotaro and Sawaki Midori, some other disciplinary committee members. Recognizing him as a Course 2 student, they try to pick on him, but immediately comport as soon as Mari tells them about how he royally humbled Hattori, the vice president, by kicking his ass while holding back his true abilities. They are even more shocked because Hattori had been carrying an undefeated streak ever since he enrolled at the academy. Well, until now. They immediately give him their respect and appreciate him for being on their team. The following day, Tatsuya and Morisaki, the Course 1 student who stirred trouble with him and his friends the other day, get introduced to the entire disciplinary committee as recruits. Morisaki can't help but feel disgusted at the fact that Weed has been offered the same position as him in the school body. Mari gives the both of them a rundown of their responsibilities and hands over their badges and CADs to them. Tatsuya asks if he can make some tweaks to his CAD and once Mari gives him the go-ahead, he grabs an extra CAD from the room. While they are dismissed to their respective duties, Morisaki confronts Tatsuya with visible disgust and tells him not to get full of himself because they hold the same rank. He then stomps off to patrol like a kid. While patrolling, Tatsuya plays the knight in shining armor for Erika, who is drowning in attention from overzealous club recruiters. The two then saunter over to the school gym, where they stumble upon a heated squabble between the Kendo Club and the Kenjutsu Club. Erika explains to Tatsuya that the people involved are Mibu Sayaka, the student who came second place in the National Junior High Kendo Tournament for girls 2 years ago, and Kirihara Takeaki, the student who equally came first in the boys' Kendo Tournament. Kirihara had come to pick a fight with Mibu for some petty reason. They both decide to settle it through a duel, which ends with Kirihara getting his ass kicked by a lady. Not one to take defeat gracefully, Kirihara decides to unleash his inner sore loser by activating his flashy spell, Sonic Blade, and taking a swipe at Mibu. Tatsuya, channeling his inner action hero, whips out 2 CADs simultaneously and counters the attack with style, leaving Kirihara immobilized and probably rethinking his life choices. He announces that he'll be taking Kirihara into custody for the offense of improper magic use within the school premises. The Kenjutsu Club members, clearly unable to process that a weed like Tatsuya could be part of the public moral committee and have the audacity to detain their leader, collectively decide to throw a tantrum. They launch themselves at Tatsuya simultaneously. Tatsuya, however, goes Ultra Instinct, evading all their attacks with the grace of a ballet dancer, and dismantling their spells faster than a magician revealing his tricks. Meanwhile, Tsukasa Kinue, the captain of the Kendo Club, stands on the sidelines, watching the whole spectacle with a growing sense of admiration. Tatsuya gives a riveting report on the Clash of the Titans to Mari, Mayumi, and Jumonji Katsuto, the chairman of the Extracurricular Activities Federation. With a poker face, he claims he didn't see who started the fight. Seeing that Kirihara Takeaki was genuinely sorry, Tatsuya decided to let the health committee handle him without any extra drama. Mari, feeling relieved, hands over the mess to Katsuto, who agrees to counsel the people involved. They probe if anyone else used magic, but Tatsuya, playing it cool, denies it conveniently, leaving out his magic-canceling tricks. Later that day, Miyuki and the loser squad meet up for dinner at a restaurant, where they discuss the club incident where Tatsuya had intervened. Leo tells Tatsuya he was lucky he didn't get hurt while trying to stop the fight, and Miyuki, brimming with confidence in her brother's combat skills, tells him there's nothing to worry about. She tells them no one can defeat Tatsuya because he's the strongest. Is bro the honored one, or what? Tatsuya then discreetly explains how he used a knockoff version of cast jamming that exploits the interference from 2 CADs being used simultaneously to block similar magic. Leo asks why he's trying to keep such a discovery hidden, and he explains that the implications of anti-night free cast jamming are too risky to disclose. On the 4th day of the club recruitment week, Tatsuya gets an urgent call about an incident at the gymnasium. On the way to the gymnasium, he's ambushed by some mystery dude who attacks him stealthily. But thanks to his magic cancellation technique, he manages to nullify his attacks. The dude then escapes hastily with magic. The following week, Tatsuya is off duty, so he has enough time to hang out with his sister. While they hang out, Mibu Sakaya, from Kendo Club, approaches Tatsuya to thank him for the other day. She then asks him for a chat, which makes Miyuki jealous. Tatsuya meets Mibu in the cafe, where she thanks him for diffusing the recent incident. She mentions that some people are trying to exploit the situation for their gain, like certain disciplinary committee members trying to earn brownie points. When Tatsuya reveals he's on the committee, she quickly clarifies she didn't mean him, clearly flustered. Getting to the point, Tatsuya asks what she wants. Mibu invites him to join the Kendo Club, which he immediately declines. He asks her why she invited him in the first place, and Sayaka explains her frustration with the discrimination against Course 2 students, coupled with her resentment towards the emphasis on practical scores. She then goes ahead to explain that she can't stomach the thought of her sword skills being held in contempt, just because she's not good at magic, and that's why the non-magic-oriented clubs have decided to unite and will need his cooperation. Seeing her speak so eloquently, Tatsuya smiles and tells her he's going to support her to present the argument to the school. During lunch the next day, Mari teases Tatsuya about the rumors of him flirting with Sayaka at the cafe. This upsets Miyuki, and she's about to go Aokiji in the student council room, until Tatsuya calms her down and assures her that nothing happened. These siblings are beginning to creep me out. Tatsuya explains what he discussed with Mibu, and Mari clarifies that the Public Morals Committee is purely honorary, so there are no points to be gained from her suggestion. Mayumi suggests that someone might be manipulating opinions against the school, prompting Tatsuya to ask if it's Blanche. This revelation shocks Mari and Mayumi, since it's classified information. Tatsuya criticizes the government's handling of the situation, and Mayumi agrees, noting the secrecy, despite the existence of an anti-magic organization. Mari then asks how he plans to handle Mibu, and Tatsuya replies that he's waiting for a response from her first, and will decide after hearing it. Later, Tatsuya gets summoned to chat with Counselor Ono Haruka. She tries to rattle him, but he fires back, mocking her outfit as a style disaster. Haruka then ropes him into a psychological assessment, explaining it's for a study on the year's freshmen. Tatsuya agrees, and she starts her evaluation. In the end, she slyly asks if Mibu had asked him out. He denies it and questions her source, but she keeps quiet. He then leaves for class. Meanwhile, Sayaka meets with Tsukasa Kinoe, who was adamant about recruiting Tatsuya to the kendo club. That evening, Tatsuya briefs Miyuki on Blanche, revealing them as a terrorist group. He mentions spotting an Eagle-Eye member, a Blanche affiliate, at their school. Tatsuya explains that while Blanche outwardly opposes magic and champions equality, their focus on median income is misleading. It can sway struggling students at first high, despite the costs to the elite. He muses that without his unique, irreplicable abilities, he might be tempted by their rhetoric too. Tatsuya concludes that their real aim is to wipe out magic in Japan. The siblings agree they need to intervene before the 10 master clans do, which would expose their Yotsuba lineage. Tatsuya assures Miyuki he'll handle things before it gets to that point. In the magic practice room, after a bit of trial and error, Shiba Tatsuya finally manages to activate his magic to move the cart at an average speed on his third attempt. Shibata Mizuki congratulates him enthusiastically. She then tells him that if he were good at practical skills too, he'd be too perfect and unapproachable, like Levi Ackerman. She goes on to tell him that in real combat, she knows he could activate his magic even faster because she had noticed him discarding and rebuilding his magic sequence in an instant. Seeing she's got quite a keen pair of eyes, Tatsuya gets slightly impressed and acknowledges her observation. He then explains that with basic single-system level magic, it's indeed possible to speed things up by constructing a magic sequence directly, essentially cutting out the magical middleman. This leads to a deeper conversation about Tatsuya's interest in magic, which surprises Mizuki. He tells her that he's not studying magic for combat use, but instead, his goal is to use magic to develop energy, and that is why he needs to be able to master multiple process spells invoked by activation sequences. Feeling inspired, Mizuki shares her own story. She started studying magic just to control her unusually perceptive eyes, but hadn't thought about what she wanted to do with magic in the future. However, Tatsuya's dedication lights a spark in her, and she decides she'll start thinking more seriously about her magical future. Just as Mizuki gets more and more animated, practically vibrating with excitement, Erika interrupts her with a teasing comment. This brings Mizuki back to reality, making her realize how loud she had gotten. Tatsuya meets up with Mibu Sayaka, who's ready to give him a response. She tells him that letting the school know that the Course 2 students are not all about magic isn't nearly enough, and she demands that the school improves their conditions. Tatsuya, always the straightforward guy, points out that the main issue seems to be the availability of teachers and asks if she wants the school to hire more teachers or invest more in their club activities. Mibu, who wasn't expecting him to be that straightforward, gets flustered. He then admits that he doesn't want much change at the school and that he's quite happy just being able to access classified documents and graduate from Magic High School without too much fuss. With that, he stands up and walks away. Later that day, the school radio broadcasting system is hijacked by a rebellious group of students calling themselves the Sympathizer Alliance, who claim that their mission is to abolish discrimination at the school. The student council gathers at the broadcasting room door like a SWAT team, but is unable to enter because the students have already locked the door and barricaded themselves inside. While brainstorming on what action to take, Tatsuya calls up Mibu and discovers she's also in the broadcasting room. He assures her that the student council is ready to negotiate with their demands and that they should come out. The council, armed with restraint spells and determination, manages to subdue the rebellious students on their exit. Mayumi then steps in, playing Mother Teresa for a reason. She tells them to release the restrained students, explaining they're not going to bolt. While acting all high and mighty, she calls Mibu over to discuss the nitty-gritty details of the upcoming negotiations, probably envisioning herself as a future diplomat. It was all a plan they had cooked up to meet the students' demands while putting them back in their place at the same time. The next day, Tatsuya has a chat with Mayumi, who fills him in on Mibu's predicament. Mibu wants better treatment for the students, but hasn't figured out how she wants things to be changed. It seems like she's hoping the student council will magically pull a pink pigeon out of a hat. After a spirited and heated discussion, they decided to hold a public debate the next day, with Mayumi being the lone representative from the student council. Later on, Tatsuya spots a strange student chatting with Mizuki. Judging by his physique, he identifies him as the person who tried to ambush him the other day. In his best protective mode, he shoots in with a typical K-drama plot and makes him leave. He asks Mizuki who he is, and Mizuki fills him in that it's Tsukasa Kinoe, the captain of the kendo club. She adds that he also has hypersensitive eyes and has been trying to recruit her to his club of other students with the same kind of eyes. Later that evening, Tatsuya and Miyuki pay a visit to Mr. Yakumo, who provides a crash course on Kino's ancestry and his connection to Blanche through his brother, Tsukasa Hajime. Mr. Yakumo then tells them to be on the lookout that Kinoe might be plotting something against their school debate that is coming up. On the day of the public debate, Mayumi wipes the floor with her opponents, demonstrating rhetorical skills that would make any seasoned politician proud. She passionately discusses how the student council is actively working to abolish discrimination. She also makes a bold promise that when she steps down, she intends to change the rule that prevents Course 2 students from being part of the student council. Her speech is so compelling that she wins the support of everyone present. Just as she's basking in the glow of unanimous approval, multiple explosions rock the outside area. Terrorists choose this dramatic moment to attempt a rush on the debate hall, but the student council goes James Bond on them. Tatsuya decides to investigate the practical skills building where a different explosion occurred, and Miyuki, ever the loyal sister and sidekick, insists on accompanying him. Tatsuya and Miyuki make their way to the practical skills building, arriving just in time to lend a hand to Leo and Erika in fighting off the terrorists. Things take an unexpected turn when Ono Haruka makes an appearance and tells them that the practical skills building is just a smokescreen and the real action is happening at the library. She tells them Mibu is with them at the library, but refuses to give them tea about it. Instead, she makes an emotional appeal to Tatsuya about giving Sayaka another shot. Tatsuya, in his Kakeru Ryuin manner, turns her down flat, hinting that Haruka's bleeding heart might end up causing more trouble than it's worth. Without missing a beat, Tatsuya and his crew head off to the library. On the way, they meet some students fighting against some terrorists, so Leo decides to join the fun while the rest of the squad press on towards their goal. Inside the building, Tatsuya goes full Renningen and does a quick scan to pinpoint the enemy's exact locations. Erika impatiently charges in like a hungry dog and takes on the enemies lurking on the first floor, clearing the path for Tatsuya and Miyuki to advance to the second. Inside the browsing room on the second floor, Mibu wonders why the terrorists are trying to gain access to the school's cutting-edge magic when her only goal is to end school discrimination. The terrorists finally manage to hack their way into the system and start copying data, but the inseparable siblings suddenly burst through the door and smash their devices, putting all their labor in vain. Some of the terrorists angrily try to attack Tatsuya, but Princess Elsa goes complete Nezuko on them. Tatsuya then tells Mibu that the utopia of equality she's seeking doesn't exist, and she's just being played like a fiddle. He also points out that Mibu's problem isn't just being overlooked by everyone else, but her biggest critic is herself, stewing in self-hatred for being a weed. Mibu has an epiphany and realizes how easily she has been used because of her insecurities. The other terrorists try to be slick by rallying some caste-jamming magic, but they get asses whooped respectively by Tatsuya. Mibu then makes a run for it, but the siblings let them go, knowing fully well that Erika has the exit covered. Mibu runs into Erika on her way out, who is eager to see if her sword skills can keep up with the rumors. Erika, clearly feeling a bit shonen, decides to attack, and Mibu easily swerves through her attacks with a self-acceleration skill. Recognizing the skill, Erika, in true anime protagonist fashion, still breaks Mibu's weapon. Mibu, in a Zoro-like manner, picks up the sword, tosses away her ring, and declares she'll beat Erika with her power. Erika, with a smirk, goes Brook on her in an instant, while revealing that she's from the Chiba family and that Watanabe Mari, whom Mibu had likened her to, is their pupil. She tells Mibu to stand proud, but Mibu dramatically faints afterward, since passing out is the evidence in a typical anime fight that there's a winner. Meanwhile, Tsukasa Kanoe tries to escape from the school, but the Public Morals Committee double-crosses him and knocks him out. The police also arrive and arrest all the terrorists. Mibu wakes up in the school infirmary and meets Leo, Erika, the siblings, and the student council elite members. She explains that the kendo club captain, Kinoe, had been rallying them to fight against magic-based discrimination. After facing discrimination shortly after entering the school, She got swept up in his speeches like any character would after listening to Naruto's unbeatable talk no jutsu. She goes on to explain that she was awed by Mari's magical prowess and wanted to train with her, but Mari was cold and told her to find someone of her skill level. Mari then remembers the situation and clarifies she didn't mean it that way. She thought that while her magic skills were superior, in pure kendo, she was no match for Mibu. She intended for Mibu to find someone stronger for practice, not dismiss her. Mibu, realizing that she had misunderstood the whole thing, feels pathetic about herself for a year holding a grudge. Tatsuya then tells her that it helped her become stronger and hone her skills. Tatsuya feels disturbed about the remaining members of Blanche and doesn't want to involve the police, so Mibu will not be arrested either. He's determined to handle the situation himself, but Miyuki, Erika, and Leo insist on joining him. Tatsuya suddenly opens the door to reveal Ono Haruka, who had been eavesdropping. He makes her reveal everything she knows about the organization, which she does. With her information, they learn the location, and Jumonji Katsuto decides to join in on their raid. As they prepare to head out, Kirihara Takeaki approaches Katsuto and asks to join them, revealing that he has been secretly listening to their conversation. Katsuto asks why he wants to tag along, and Kirihara explains that he has always admired Mibu's sword skills, but along the line, her intentions became clouded, making him angry and sick. He wants to confront the person responsible for manipulating her, and Katsuto agrees to let him join, acknowledging that it's a valid reason to risk his life. Getting to the Blanche headquarters, Tatsuya orders Leo and Erika to secure their escape route and deal with any fleeing enemies, while he and Miyuki take the front and Katsuto and Kirihara sneak in from the back. Tatsuya and Miyuki slowly advance until they reach a large room where they find Blanche's evil boss, Tsukasa Hajime, and his armed goons ready for an ambush. Hajime, pulling a classic villain intro, reveals himself as the head honcho of the Japanese branch. Tatsuya advises them to surrender, but Hajime just laughs and instead proposes that Tatsuya and his sister join him. As expected, Tatsuya refuses, so he uses a consciousness interference type magic called Evil Eye to try to hypnotize him. To his surprise, Tatsuya doesn't flinch. Tatsuya then asks if this hypnotism is what he used on Mibu to replace her memories. Realizing his Super Saiyan manipulation technique had just failed, Hajime ordered his men to open fire, but Tatsuya, in a swift, disassembles all their guns with magic. Seeing his downfall unfold, the evil boss screams pathetically and runs for his dear life. Miyuki tells Tatsuya to chase him down while she handles the disarmed minions. One of the terrorists tries to pull a sneaky knife attack on Tatsuya, but Miyuki goes full Elsa again and stops him cold, this time freezing all the men with him. Meanwhile, Katsuto, feeling like Captain America, advances towards the enemies, shooting at them with his shield magic. When he gets close enough, Kirihara emerges from behind him and completely solos all the enemies. If it were a certain anime, yelling "Arise" would have been an option. Tatsuya pursues Hajime into another ambush, but uses his elemental sight to disarm all the terrorists before stepping into the room. Hajime and his men whip out Anti-Knight for some serious cast jamming. Thinking he has found the glitch, Hajime orders his men to kill Tatsuya, but the cast jamming doesn't work on our hero, who then uses partial decomposition to neutralize all the terrorists except Hajime. Hajime, now panicking, demands to know why Tatsuya can still use magic when Kirihara bursts in like a soul reaper. Enraged that Hajime is the terrorist leader, Kirihara slices off his arm with the Anti-Knight bracelet, but is stopped from finishing him off by Katsuto. Bro got no chill far. Seeing that all the other Blanche members have been taken care of, Katsuto uses his magic to sustain Hajime's bleeding. Tatsuya drops by the hospital to check up on Mibu, who is still recovering from her clash with Erika, and tells her not to worry, since the school's hushing up the mess to avoid another scandal. In a weird, friendly manner, he asks her to let him know beforehand the day she'll be getting discharged, so he can come and celebrate her recovery. I guess Erika did a number on her. On the day of her discharge, Erika and the siblings visit Mibu at the school hospital and meet her acting all lovey-dovey with Kirihara. Erika gossips to both of them about how Kirihara has been showing up daily to check up on her. They approach Mibu and congratulate her on her discharge, where her old man pulls Tatsuya aside for a heart-to-heart conversation, thanking him for saving his baby girl. Tatsuya acts humble and tells him he didn't do anything to earn his gratitude. Mibu's old man then tells Tatsuya that he fits into the exact description Kazama gave him about him. Hearing the name Kazama, Tatsuya gets cautious, but Mibu's old man tells him not to worry about anything. He tells him that Kazama was an old accomplice who once shared a barack with him, and he assures Tatsuya that he's not going to tell anyone anything about it before taking his leave. Back with the gang, Erika pokes fun, asking Mibu why she chose Kirihara over Tatsuya. who's stronger and is more good-looking. This gets Mibu flustered, and she spills tea about feeling overshadowed by Tatsuya's power level, but finds Kirihara more like someone she can keep up with. Erika teases Kirihara, trying to uncover his feelings, but Tatsuya drops a bombshell about Kirihara being head over heels for Mibu, reminiscing about his epic boss fight moment. This flares Kirihara up as Erika teases him more with the new intel. Tatsuya then taps Miyuki, signaling that they take the cue to leave. While they head out, Miyuki assures her brother that she'll do her best to keep up with him, no matter where he goes. The two of them then engage in pep talks about pursuing and conquering while they head back to school. At third high school, Ichiju Masaki is deep into his training session when Kichijuji Shinkuru informs him about the terrorist incident at First High. Ichiju expresses confidence that the students at First High will be safe, considering the presence of direct descendants from the Jumonji and Segusa families, along with numerous talented students. Shinkuru remarks that despite this assurance, none can rival Masaki, renowned as the Crimson Prince. Tatsuya and Miyuki are training with Mr. Yakumo when they suddenly sense a presence lurking in the nearby shadows. The person then reveals herself to be Haruka, the school counselor. Surprised, Tatsuya and Miyuki ask what she's doing there, but Mr. Yakumo tells them that she's also one of his students. Haruka, in return, asks what they're training for, and Mr. Yakumo tells her that Miyuki is going to be competing in the Mirage Bat and Ice Pillars break tournaments that are coming up. Tatsuya, still feeling uneasy, asks her why she came. She then tells him that she's a public safety investor for the police department. She tells them to keep it confidential, since her status as an investigator is a secret. Tatsuya, being the smart ass he normally is, uses the opportunity to strike a deal, indicating that if any incidents like the Blanche plot were to happen again, she should let him know beforehand. During sports activity in school, Class E and Class F engage in a friendly soccer match that ends with Class E gracefully whooping Class F's ass. After the game, Tatsuya and Leo approach Mikihiko, a classmate who played well in the game and contributed to the opponent's ass whooping. I'll be referring to him as Mickey from here on. They introduce themselves to him, and he equally does the same. Mickey then tells them he respects them a lot for being able to put up with some as troublesome as Erika. They ask what sort of relationship he has with Erika, and he reveals that they are childhood friends. Just then, Erika shows up with Mizuki and confirms his claim, while adding that Mickey seems to have been avoiding her for the last 6 months. During lunch break, the student council members discuss the forthcoming tournament, comprising the 9 magic high schools all over the country. Mayumi tells them about how they've been able to finalize their lists of the contestants that will be participating, but adds that they still have a crucial issue of choosing engineers. Suddenly, they remember that Tatsuya has quite the experience with CAD engineering. They try to convince him to fill the position, but he seems adamant, claiming that the students would not want to trust a first-year Course 2 student with their CADs, and that trust between engineer and user is a very crucial part of CAD fine-tuning. Miyuki then convinces him, and he immediately agrees to it. After school hours, the student council and all other school executives meet for a practice session to see if Tatsuya is really up to the task. Kirihara agrees to be the scapegoat by volunteering his CAD for readjustment. Tatsuya proceeds to copy Kirihara's CAD settings over to a different CAD and make it immediately usable without tampering with the activation sequence. While he works, some side characters make the usual comments about how he introduced an ancient technology procedure, but we won't be going too deep into that. While maintaining his steez, our MC completes the procedure in due time, and of course, the new CAD completely replicates all the attributes of the original after Kirihara tests it out. This impresses everybody, and Hattori, the hard-boiled vice president who got his ass kicked the other day, agrees to make Tatsuya the engineer. After noting that Kirihara's CAD is a model boasting higher specs that is much more difficult than the average one, he vouches that if Tatsuya can replicate something this complex, that easily, then he holds nothing against him taking up the role of the school engineer. Katsudo then agrees that Tatsuya should take the role. Back at home, Tatsuya receives a hologram call from a man dressed in military uniform, who is revealed to be Kazama, a special officer. Kazama informs him that they have finished overhauling the Third Eye operation and would like to update him about it. Tatsuya then tells them that he'll head over to their lab the following morning. Kazama tries to talk him out of it, saying he doesn't need to compromise his school hours, but our hard-boiled MC seems to have made up his mind already. Kazama then goes on to inform him to be careful during the forthcoming tournament because they've reportedly spotted members of an international crime syndicate in the venue designated for the tournament and because of the odd timing, they are likely targeting the tournament. He adds that after looking into them, he found out that they might be members of a Hong Kong-based crime syndicate called the No-Head Dragons. Later that night, Miyuki brings Tatsuya coffee while he does some experiments. He then shows her his flying spell discovery and proceeds to test it on her. Being his sole lab rat, they do the necessary enhancements, and Miyuki starts flying like Tinkerbell. Tatsuya and Miyuki make a trip to Four Leaves Technology. When they arrive at the lab, Tatsuya gets a hero's welcome from the staff, like All Might entering UA High. He exchanges greetings with Ushiyama, the head of the lab, and the mysterious Mr. Taurus of Taurus Silver fame. Without wasting any time, Tatsuya hands over the flight device he's programmed and explains he's got the magic to finally work. Ushiyama, channeling his inner Professor Oak, immediately orders his team into action, proclaiming that the advent of flight magic will rewrite the history of magic. 10 magicians suit up in protective gears to test the flight devices, while others watch. The first tester activates his device and starts flying around the room like a witch on a broom. Seeing this, the other testers join in, turning the test into an impromptu aerial game of tag. After the test, Ushiyama scolds the exhausted testers for goofing off mid-experiment. Tatsuya observes that the spell puts a lot of strain on average magicians, unlike him and Miyuki, thanks to their high cyan counts, a bit like cyans handling high gravity. He concludes they need to make the CAD's cyan absorption more efficient, and Ushiyama promises to handle the hardware improvements, like a low-budget Tony Stark. As they leave, Tatsuya and Miyuki run into Aoki, the Yotsuba family's butler, and their dad, Shiba Tatsuru. Aoki greets Miyuki, but gives Tatsuya the cold shoulder. Miyuki isn't having it, and calls Aoki out. Aoki, ever the hierarchy stickler, says he's just respecting the family pecking order, implying Tatsuya, the mere guardian, is beneath Miyuki, the prized succession candidate. Tatsuya cuts in, pointing out that Aoki's stirring the pot by suggesting a successor when none's been officially named. Aoki loses it, and retorts that it's not mere speculation, and that a heartless fake magician like Tatsuya wouldn't get it. Miyuki's rage hits Super Saiyan levels, and she's about to use the techniques of the captain of the 10th division of a certain anime, but Tatsuya calms her down. He then calmly notes that Aoki's comments could be seen as a dig at Yotsuba Miya, the family head. Tatsuru intervenes, telling Tatsuya not to speak ill of his mother just because he hates her. Tatsuya just walks Miyuki out on them while thinking to himself if he's even capable of bearing that kind of feeling in his heart. At first high, Tatsuya gets showered with congratulations from his classmates over his new appointment. During the lunch break, Mayumi introduces the athletes, who are sporting their competition uniforms, to the students, while Miyuki pins badges on their blazers. Later, Tatsuya meets with his fellow athletes to go over some CAD adjustments and training schedules. Amy, one of the athletes, grumbles that she wants a female engineer, but Subaru, another athlete, is chill as long as Tatsuya can do the job. This irks Honoka, who insists that Tatsuya is a pro. Kazumi, catching the use of Tatsuya's first name, tries to tease Honoka, but she quickly points out that everyone does it. Miyuki emphasizes that they're just friends, adding a little sparkle like she's in a shoujo anime. Tatsuya, however, is getting annoyed with all the chatter and just wants to get on with the meeting. 8 days before the big competition, Mizuki is hanging out outside the school building when she spots Tatsuya putting his athletes through their paces. Suddenly, something paranormal catches her extraordinary eyes, so she heads off to investigate. She ends up in the medicine experiment room, where she finds Mickey training with spirits. She startles him, and his spirits almost go on the attack, but Tatsuya swoops in to save the day, stopping them just in time. Bro might actually be Batman for real. Curious, Tatsuya asks if Mikihiko was using ancient spirit magic, shocking Mikihiko into admitting he was. Mizuki describes the spirit she had seen in the room, which gets Mikihiko super excited. The thought she might have the crystal eyes he has been searching for years makes him wag his tail like a dog. Tatsuya concludes that Mizuki's eyes are valuable, and Mikihiko agrees, but assures he has no intention of seizing her or spilling the secret about her eyes to anyone. Tatsuya also agrees to keep it under wraps, while Mizuki is left thoroughly confused, like she just walked into an episode of The Twilight Zone. On the day the athletes are set to leave, Mayumi delays them by coming almost 2 hours late. When she arrives, she apologizes to everybody and tries to tease Tatsuya into a compliment, but bro is as hard as a rock. Tatsuya tells her she's stressed and to get some rest on the bus, then heads off to a different vehicle. On the way, Mayumi vents about Tatsuya, but Suzune teases her about it. Suddenly, a car from the other lane loses control and flips over the barrier. Crashing on their lane, it catches fire as it tumbles towards the school buses. As the flaming car approaches, numerous students attempt to stop it with magic, but their spells clash and fail. Mari asks Katsuto for help, and he says he can stop the car but not handle the cyan storm. Miyuki says she'll deal with the fire, so she prepares her CAD and strips the moving vehicle of its flames. Katsuto then uses his phalanx to stop the car just before it hits their bus. The bus finally reaches the hotel just before noon. While they disperse, Hattori, feeling like a side character in the face of the siblings' OP skills, admits to Kirihara that his confidence is shaken. Kirihara reassures him that not taking any action is the right call, and notes that the Shiba siblings are anything but ordinary. He tells him not to lose his confidence because he's strong on his own, and that the siblings are just on a different level. He then notes that Mayumi would be thrilled by Hattori's new outlook and acknowledgement of the competence of Course 2 students. Outside, Tatsuya tells Miyuki that the incident wasn't an accident, but a high-level magic suicide attack. Miyuki condemns the cowardly tactics used. As Tatsuya and Miyuki head inside the hotel, Erika and Mizuki appear, ready to cheer them on, but Tatsuya ignores her like Sasuke would and leaves to join the seniors, much to Erika's annoyance. At the banquet, students from all schools gather to socialize but stick to their cliques. Tatsuya, embracing his inner loner protagonist, stands alone by the wall. Erika, now working as a server, greets him and leaves to continue working. Miyuki then links up with her brother for a chat. Meanwhile, Shizuku and Honoka approach, noting that others want to talk to Miyuki, but are too intimidated by Tatsuya's presence. Kanon and Kei join in, with Kanon criticizing the group's lack of teamwork. To defuse the situation, Tatsuya encourages Miyuki to join the others, emphasizing the importance of teamwork. Miyuki reluctantly agrees, and the five of them head over, leaving our protagonist solo. While the boys from the other academies stare at Miyuki, she can't seem to take her eyes off Tatsuya. Meanwhile, the boys from Third High, including Ichiju Masaki, seem to be smitten by her beauty, just like an average One Piece side character would be when setting their eyes on Hancock. Shinkuru is surprised to see Masaki showing interest in a girl, so he explains who Miyuki is, mentioning she's First High's freshman ace. A guest speaker then mounts the stage, welcoming them for choosing to participate in the 9 schools competition. The speaker then announces that the chairman of the Magic Association, Retsu Kudo, would like to address them. While the students are honored to finally see the chairman in person, a woman takes the stage instead. Tatsuya immediately senses Retsu concealing his presence behind her. Realizing he's been noticed, Retsu sends the woman away and makes his appearance, apologizing for his sleight of hand trick. He points out only about 5 people recognized it as magic, shocking the students. He adds that if he were a terrorist who intended to blow them all up, only those 5 students would survive. He then emphasizes that magic is a means, not in itself an end, and urges them to study hard, saying strong magic used poorly is worse than weak magic used creatively. After the banquet, Honoka and Shizuku chat with Miyuki in their room about the competition and their plans until it's their turn to compete. Amy then comes in and invites them to join in the artificial hot spring, having secured permission to use it. The girls settle down in the hot spring for some classic anime girl talk. Meanwhile, Mickey is practicing his spirit magic outside when he suddenly senses the presence of intruders. Hesitant due to losing his powers in an accident a year ago, decides to inform security about it. He then rethinks about how Tatsuya always never backs down from an opponent, even though he does not have as much magical energy as they do, so he decides to act on his own. He spots 3 intruders and is about to attack when they notice him, which mysteriously fall apart before they can fire. Mickey then knocks out all 3 with his magic. From the shadows emerges Tatsuya, who had used his technique to destroy the intruders' weapons. I honestly don't know how Tatsuya is always there when someone needs help. All I can say is with great power. Tatsuya commends Mickey for sending the intruders to Dreamland in one shot, without fatally wounding them. Mickey, on the other hand, can't seem to get over the fact that he was only able to do it because of Tatsuya's help. Tatsuya just calls him a dim bulb for discrediting himself that much. He then tells him to stand strong before proceeding to give him a pep talk about the sky being the starting point and stuff like that. After the belated speech, Tatsuya asks him to go and alert security about the intruders, while he stands guard. Immediately as he leaves, Kazama approaches Tatsuya from the shadows and tells him he knows Mickey has struck some chords in him since they both share similar inward struggles. Tatsuya smiles. It is finally the day of the National Magic High School Goodwill Tournament of Magic Skills. It is announced that this year's tournament will follow the usual format with 5 days each of official matches and rookie competitions for a total of 10 days. The students enter the arena and settle down at their allocated schools' compartments. The first competition is the official women's battleboard event, and the designated athletes take their positions. Mari has been selected to represent First High, so she takes her position too. While a lot of students cheer her on, the starting shot is fired, and one of the contestants immediately uses a spell to create a huge wave on the water to throw off the other contestants. Mari doesn't seem to be affected because she's simultaneously casting fortification magic while multicasting movement magic to anchor her relative position to her board so as not to fall off. As expected in any anime competition, some characters on the sidelines are making comments and accessing all her moves. It is then revealed that Mari is also multicasting vibration magic, making about 3 simultaneous continuous spells at the same time. This gives her quite the edge as she effortlessly gives all her opponents the dust, or should I say the mist this time. Later that day, Tatsuya gets invited by Kazama to a hotel room for a discussion with some pretty high-up people. They talk about the intruders he had met the previous day, and the men tell him that they are with the No-Head Dragons organization they're investigating. They claim to let him know when they find out what they're after. Afterward, Tatsuya meets up with his friends at the arena. The next event is the speed shooting event. Representing First High is no one else but Mayumi, the student council president. She gets the usual cheer from the crowd as she takes her position. The discs are launched, and as expected, First High effortlessly stomps the opponents with a huge score difference. I think they're called First High for a reason. After the day's events, the First High girls meet up in the hotel and celebrate. First High had aced all the events they participated in, including the boys. On the second day of the competition, Mayumi walks up to Tatsuya, who is busy with some CAD adjustments, to announce that it's almost time for her match. She makes him help her stretch. She then goes into some unnecessary pep talk about how she has always wanted a younger brother, but never got one. She adds that seeing how he never tenses up, gets flustered, or is distracted by her appearance like other boys do, makes her wonder if this is how it feels to have a younger brother. Our MC, still as hard-boiled as ever, just tells her he has to get back to work. Ms. Izumi, one of the other technical engineers, then suddenly appears and tells him not to worry about it. She tells him to go and watch Mayumi's match while she takes care of the rest. Mayumi effortlessly defeats her opponent in the women's crowd ball event, and Kanon gets ready for the next match, which is the women's pillars break event. It's an event where 2 contestants try to use magic to break all the pillars in the opponent's court without leaving a spot. Kanon, ever the strategic type, uses a Yagami light strategy to trick her opponent into destroying her pillars herself. Shout out to First High. Unfortunately, the boys lost in the men's crowd ball, so it kinda put First High in a tight spot, making them reconsider if they can emerge the overall best. Some of the other academies have been winning too, and now, the only thing that can give them an edge over the other academies is if they win at least 4 of the remaining 6 matches. Later that day, Tatsuya receives a package, which Erika identifies to be a weaponized integrated CAD. He then tosses it to Leo to be his guinea pig in the experiment. Tatsuya and Leo are outside the hotel, testing out the new armament device. Leo is more impressed by the fact that the blade can detach like Captain Buggy, and the detached part can be controlled remotely, as if it were a longer sword. Tatsuya goes full tech guru mode, explaining how the fortification magic is keeping the blade glued to the hilt, even when it isn't physically attached. Next up, Leo gets to test out the new toy on a bunch of dummy figures made of straw. On the third day of the competition, Mari and her 2 rivals in the semi-final match of the battle board hold their marks. The whistle is blown, and they take off, with Mari barely edging out Kuroki Risa from 7th High. Suddenly, Risa's board goes rogue, accelerating like it has just unleashed a chakra burst. To prevent Risa from crashing, Mari slows down and tries to catch Risa, but her board suddenly dips at the worst possible moment. Both girls end up crashing through the barriers and fall unconscious, surprising the crowd. Marie wakes up in Susono Base Hospital, and Mayumi informs her she has broken some ribs and will have to chill out of the competition. Marie asks about the race, and Mayumi tells her that 7th High got a penalty for reckless conduct, and that 3rd High and 9th High will be advancing to the finals. Mayumi tells her that Risa only sustained minor injuries thanks to her brave act, so her heroics weren't in vain. Mayumi then gets serious and asks Mari if she felt the effect of someone using magic on her during her race. Mari confirms that she felt an unnatural swaying at her feet just before her board dipped. Mayumi then further explains that the water's surface seemed to be fluctuating unnaturally the moment she lost her footing, hinting at the use of magic. She analyzes that neither competitor was using that kind of magic at the moment, hinting at a third party's involvement. In Tatsuya's room, Miyuki, Kei, and Kanon join him in investigating the water accident. Kei explains that the competition is packed with magicians on security and cameras to catch illegal magic, and despite this, someone still casts a spell without being detected. He concludes that the caster must have been from within the water. The doorbell then rings, and Miyuki lets Miki and Mizuki in. Tatsuya introduces them and explains he needs their help solving the mystery of the invisible caster. He briefs them, noting how the water was moving like it was alive, but no human could hide in the water to cast it. Tatsuya gets an idea and asks Miki if a spirit can cast a delayed spell with a deferred activation to make the water cave in under certain conditions. Miki confirms it's possible, but says the spell's power would be too low to matter. Tatsuya reveals Risa's board accelerated when it should have decelerated, a rookie mistake not even a retard would make. He concludes her CAD was tampered with, swapping the deceleration spell for an acceleration spell to cause the accident. Kei asks how a CAD could be tampered with, and Tatsuya suggests there's a mole among the staff who did it during the inspection. Meanwhile, Mayumi discusses the situation with the siblings, Hattori, Suzune, Mari, and Katsuto. Mirage Bat and Monolith Code are the only events left, and they need first place in both to secure overall victory. Mari adds, they have to watch for interference too. Suzune says the points are within predictions, but Third High is doing better than expected, and that if they don't do well in the rookie matches, they'll need to win. Mirage Bat or Third High might pull off a surprise victory on them. Mayumi then suggests that Miyuki replace Mari in the Mirage Bat, with Tatsuya as her engineer. Miyuki objects, but Mari points out that she's the only other person who can pull off a win at it. Mari asks Tatsuya what he thinks about it, and he replies that the opponents might give his sister a tough time, but nah, she'd win. On day 4, Tatsuya is doing some last-minute tweaks to Shizuku's CAD for her first match in the ready room. He seems to be worried about sabotage, though Hanuka is blissfully unaware. He promises to watch her match from the sidelines like a concerned senpai, ready to jump in like Izuku Midoriya if needed. In the audience, Mari mentions this is going to be their first time seeing Tatsuya's engineering skills on a CAD he fine-tuned from scratch in an actual match. The newcomer speed shooting match begins, and Shizuku unleashes her spell, setting the entire scoring area as her activation zone and detonating blasts of air to destroy the targets. Of course, Mari and the rest make the usual side comments about how amazing Shizuku is, but we won't be going deep into it. Shizuku clears the match with a perfect score like Naruto would in a ramen-eating competition. Meanwhile, Tatsuya is zipping around like Sonic, engineering for all 3 First High girls who qualified for the quarterfinals. Shizuku is a bit worried, but Tatsuya reassures her it's fine. He reminds her that her new CAD is different from the last one, and she agrees that it's a perfect fit. It's almost creepy. She confirms the other 2 girls have won their quarterfinals. Shizuku, brimming with confidence like Denji in Chainsaw Man before a big fight, then declares she's going to win and heads for her match. Shizuku's match kicks off, and she crushes it, earning a perfect score and wowing the crowd like All Might in his prime. After the match, back at First High's tent, Mayumi is over the moon, showering Tatsuya with praise so much that Suzune has to tell her to chill. Mayumi tones it down but keeps praising Tatsuya, marveling at their clean sweep of the podium. Tatsuya, trying not to lose his aura, credits the athletes Shizuku, Amy, and Kazumi instead. Suzune chimes in that the Magic University is interested in adding her active air mine to their index as new magic. Tatsuya, however, insists they put it under her name instead of his. Suzune protests, but Tatsuya explains it's standard for the first user of a new type of magic to be registered as the developer. He then explains that he doesn't want the embarrassment of being credited for magic he can't use practically. Mayumi then steps in, breaking up the friendly argument like a pro referee. She says they can table the debate for now, and tells Tatsuya she's counting on him for the upcoming matches. Elsewhere, the executives of Third High School gather to strategize against First High to leave with the trophy. Masaki kicks things off by saying aside from Shizuku, if it were just about raw magic power, the other girls wouldn't have been able to play second and third place. Shinkuru suggests that it must have been their engineer, and Masaki agrees, adding that the mastermind behind the girls' speed shooting must have some mad skills. Masaki then asked Shinkuru if he noticed the generalized CAD device Shizuku used. Shinkuru explains that it's a technology that was just revealed at a tech expo in Dusseldorf the previous summer, but was more of a concept than a usable model. Masaki states that despite this, Shizuku used a CAD with the speed and accuracy of a specialized technology and the versatility of a generalized one, while hinting that the engineer who helped in the design is someone beyond high school level. On a different kind of rank, he's someone who can be regarded as an S-class engineer. The following day, Honoka prepares for her first match, which is the newbie battle board event. She's as nervous as hell, but decides to trust Tatsuya's abilities on her CAD. The match kicks off, and Honoka goes Super Saiyan with a massive blast of light, blinding the other competitors. While they're stunned like Codmobile players, she rockets into first place, leaving the others in the dust. After the match, Honoka dashes up to Tatsuya, tears streaming down her face, to thank him. She's emotional because she always wimps out during competitions like this, so winning is a rare treat. She embraces him while thanking him repeatedly, though Miyuki looks like she's about to unleash an icy glare, worthy of Elsa. That evening, Mayumi discusses the results with the student council. Morisaki had managed to snag second place for the boys, but the rest didn't make the finals, creating a gender-flipped result. Meanwhile, in Yokohama's Chinatown, the no-head dragon branch leaders gather to gripe about the competition. They're peeved because Third High was supposed to lead the rookie events, but First High is still in the running, despite their villainous plot to sideline Mari. Naturally, a pointless fight involving a bunch of silly kids isn't supposed to concern them, but their boss seems to have placed a very huge bet on Third High to win. The men then agree that they have to make a move soon. Tatsuya returns to his room very late and finds Miyuki waiting for him. He scolds her, reminding her that sleep deprivation could cost her a match due to impaired judgment. He tries to escort her back to her room, but she tells him she heard from Shizuku that he turned down being added to the index. Tatsuya then confirms, explaining it's because of their aunt's wishes. The Magic University would investigate and potentially reveal their connections to Taurus Silver and the Yotsuba. He adds that he's currently too weak to oppose the Yotsuba, although he might handle Yotsuba Maya in a one-on-one battle, but the whole Yotsuba family is another story. This revelation reduces Miyuki to tears, and she hugs him, promising that she'll always stand by his side. She reassures him that his day will come, but until then, and even after, she will always stick to him like the straw hat to Luffy. The next day, it's Ice Pillar's break time, and Shizuku is preparing for her debut. She steps up for her match against Fifth High, looking more like she's at a tea ceremony than a magic competition. Meanwhile, Miyuki and Honoka are in the audience. Honoka nervously asks if it's okay for them to be there, but Miyuki reassures her that it wouldn't be fair to spy on Shizuku's techniques. The match begins, and Shizuku starts crushing it, her ice pillars standing tall while her opponents crumble like poorly made snowmen. After Shizuku's match, Mayumi, Mari, Kanon, and Kei arrive to wish Miyuki luck in the next tournament. Tatsuya also tells her not to get nervous, but she's as cool as a cucumber. That's a 5000 aura for her. Miyuki steps into the ring, stunning the crowd with her Shrine Maiden outfit. The match begins, and the Ice Princess gives us a plot twist by unleashing Inferno magic. The power gap between her and her opponent is so wide that she completely obliterates her within seconds, without her opponent even getting to land a scratch on her ice towers. This gets the audience screaming at the top of their lungs. After the match, the First High crew is chatting about the day's events over a meal. Tatsuya is the center of attention among the freshman girls, like a pop idol at a fan meet. This puts Morisaki on edge as he storms out of the building. His friends trail after him, and he declares they must win their match the next day to prove blooms are superior to weeds. The next day, on their way to the ready room, Tatsuya and Miyuki run into their very own Team Rocket, Masaki and Shinkaru. They praise Tatsuya as the best engineer in the 9-school competition, and he appreciates them for thinking highly of him, but he finds it rude that they block his way to the match. He tells Miyuki to prepare for the game. On the 6th day of the competition, Erika, Leonard, and Yoshida are discussing Mitsui's plans on how to win the match and how all the opponents are wearing shades to counter Mitsui's optical magic. The game starts, and surprisingly, Mitsui uses their opposition's dark shades to her advantage by putting them under an illusion. They are under the false impression that the water route ends at the border between the light and dark areas. Hence, they end up not trying to enter the dark path. She wins the match using White Shadow Dragon mode of Future Rogue. Mayumi congratulates Miyuki, Kitayama, and Akashi on a job well done in the Rookie Women's Pillars Break Final League. She tells them the tournament committee gave them a chance to withdraw from the tournament while still giving them all the points they got, even if they did not participate in the finals. The three of them are given first place. Mayumi asks the girls if they are interested in withdrawing. Akashi asks them to withdraw, while Kitayama asks for a chance to go all out against Miyuki. The face-off between Miyuki and Kitayama comes around. They stand across each other with blocks separating them. Kitayama pulls out a Glock and then fires at Miyuki's block, leaving a dent in it. Miyuki appears not worried, telling her she is trying to run when she can't even walk properly. She returns the favor by firing a Sub-Zero level ice attack that can produce liquid nitrogen at Kitayama's block, blowing up all her blocks. Mitsu walks into a sad Kitayama who got bullied by Miyuki, comforting her. Tatsuya, while lying on his bed, recollects meeting with the two geniuses, Ichijo and Shinkuro. Ichijo fought against the Soviet Union 3 years ago, wiping them out despite being 13 years of age. This earned the nickname Crimson Prince, while Shinkuro identified one of the cardinal codes, thought to only exist in theory. Tatsuya thinks out loud how peerless a genius they both are, and how difficult it will be for Morisaki and others to confront them in the match. Mayumi and Kitayama inform Tatsuya, telling him about the accident that happened in the match with the fourth high, and Morisaki and the others being bedridden. Kitayama voices out saying she thinks it has been intentional since they used battering ram inside the building. Tatsuya thinks the tournament staff might call off the rookie division monolith code since it was their fault for setting the match in a decrepit abandoned building, but it doesn't matter since the prelims are going on without them and fourth high, and they could forfeit the preliminary. Mayumi informs Tatsumi that Jumonji is handling the negotiation and requests to talk to Tatsuya. She asks if Tatsuya thinks the game was sabotaged by the fourth high. He pointed out after Mari's incident that the CAD was being tampered with, and if it was true, she questioned their reasons. Tatsuya disagrees with her, saying it is not the fourth high, but a criminal syndicate in Hong Kong that is making moves in the 9-school competition. He found out a night before the tournament when he fought against some intruders, but had to keep it a secret. A group of men appears to be discussing amongst themselves the success of their mission of allowing the first high to withdraw from the monolith code. And though they won the first round of the preliminaries, it won't matter since the monolith code held the most points. The match comes around and Tatsuya gives Mitsui and Satomi pointers on how to go around in the Mirage bat competition. The game starts and the audience is surprised about how the activation sequence function is made that tiny and questions if it was done by Tora Silver. Azusa Nakajo, who happens to be watching the winning game of Mitsui and Satomi, ponders if Tatsuya is Taurus Silver since he is the engineer for the girls and others who use advanced magic programs. In the first high meeting room, Tatsuya walked into the meeting with Jumonji, Mayumi, and other team members while they appreciated his efforts in the tournament. Mayumi stated that although they are 50 points ahead of the third high, they can secure the second position in the rookie division if they withdraw from the monolith code. She further expresses her desire to shoot for first place in the rookie events. She asks if Tatsuya is aware that Ichijo and Shinkuro will be participating in the monolith code match. He agrees since he met them earlier and was informed. Mayumi says she knows how strong those two geniuses will be together and asks if Tatsuya can participate in the competition. He tries to talk his way out by questioning the whole system, but he is sweet-talked by Jumonji, who plays reverse psychology on Bro's head, making him agree. Tatsuya is given the chance to select his teammates, and he chooses Yoshida Mikihiko from 1E and Saijo Leonhard, also from 1E. He says that he is not familiar with the others' powers, but he is quite familiar with those he chose, since they are both in the same class, and he is confident in their ability. In a room, Tatsuya plans his strategy for the monolith code match with his newly selected teammates Leonhard and Mikihiko. He explains to them how the monolith code match works. He puts Leonard in charge of defending it, while Mikihiko is in charge of the guerrilla tactics. He is to support both offense and defense with his ancient magic, which is good at surprises and ambushing. The first match of the monolith code commences with Tatsuya running towards his opponent, hopping like a frog. He immobilizes his opponent's movement and keeps running forward. He reaches the opponent's monolith, but it will be too hard to crack 512 characters while being under attack. He goes ahead to defeat the remaining opponents. Leon appears to be protecting the team's monolith, then a lame opponent clocked in at the right time. Upon sighting him, Leonhard one-shots him with a Saka boomerang, which hits the opponent in the belly. Mikihiko is seen releasing magic, jamming the opponent's sense of direction. Tatsuya, still keeping it froggy, leaps on a tree like a monkey going after a banana. As he waits for the opponent, he fires an unaware shot at him, making him go down. The match ends with a win for Tatsuya and his teammates. Ichijo and Shinkuro are seen discussing amongst themselves how to defeat Tatsuya in their match against him. Shinkuro believes they can win if they watch out for his spell dismantling, since he doesn't appear to be able to use big magic, only traps and battle knowledge. They believe it is a sure win if they fight on an open plain. The second match comes around. Tatsuya and his teammates breeze through the match with overwhelming tactics while keeping their cards. Two teachers are seen discussing the match and saying even if it is Tatsuya, he won't be dumb enough to go against Ichijo and Shinkuro with a low-spec CAD. Tatsuya and Miyuki walk outside of an elevator. Miyuki advises Tatsuya to rest, but he refuses. saying he must watch the third high's match at noon. They stumble upon Erika yelling at her brother for hanging around Mari and trying to learn magic instead of protecting the Chiba family name. He should be improving the Chiba-style kenjutsu. The brother disagrees, telling her to apologize to Mari for being rude. She refuses, saying she would rather eat grass. While leaving the scene, she stumbles upon Tatsuya and Miyuki, and they go to have a drink together, where she gets exposed about being overly sensitive when it comes to her brother Naotsugu. She shouts back at Miyuki, asking if she is not the same. Noon comes around, and it is time for the third high match. Ichijo can be spotted walking casually towards the opponent, like he is him. Different attacks are fired at him, but bro tanked them all, crushing all the rocks like he possesses white beards. Quake quake devil fruit. He keeps on walking towards the opponent's monolith, making them crap their pants due to his immense power. Bro gets to his ops and ragdolls them. Mayumi, who happened to be watching the match with Jumonji, says Ichijo is stronger than expected. She says that Ichijo has a similar style to Jumonji. Jumonji says that might be true, but he is sure that Ichijo is trying to lure Tatsuya into an open battle, and Tatsuya will fall for it. Tatsuya, who was watching with his teammates, and Miyuki, is surprised about how crazy Ichijo's powers are. Tatsuya says it is not only Ichijo they have to be worried about, since Shinkuro was supporting him with his cardinal code, an invisible bullet. Invisible bullet is a weight type plus code, and before they worry about how strong their future opponents are, they should focus on one at hand, which is the 9th high. The match against 9th high starts, and Tatsuya and his teammates casually breeze through the game like it was a tutorial for a regressor. Erika, who watches the match from the audience, smiles and says Miki is still the same. Mikihiko, who is on his way to see Mi Fuji, meets Erika staring at the mountain wearing a pirated Luffy hat. They exchange greetings, and then she asks him if he is there to absorb the mountain's energy. She watches as Mikihiko absorbs the energy till he is done, and asks him if he remembers when he was called the Yoshida family prodigy. She believes he will be more than that, and is happy for him to be able to use sense tuning, missing barriers, and energy absorption. She is also happy for him being able to use his magic before the accident, telling him to try his best at the finals. Tatsuya is seen meeting with a beautiful lady. He questions him if he is using her as an errand girl. He disagrees, saying it was the sensei who did. He asks her to find No Head Dragon's base for him. She is surprised, and asks him how he knew about that. Instead, he answers her saying he just wants to know where his enemy is located, in case he needs to strike back. He tells her that people might get the wrong idea about how close she is to him. The lady gets embarrassed, telling Tatsuya to give her a day to finish the mission. Ichijo and Shinkuro are glad the match set out, as they predicted, since it is happening on an open plain stage. Tatsuya will have no choice but to come for a one-on-one fight, relying on his spell reminder, which they plan to crush in the match. On the 8th day of the competition, Tatsuya gives Leonhard and Mikihiko a robe inscribed with magic circles that can help to increase their magic and block invisible bullets of Cardinal George, our genius Shinkuro. Mayumi asks if Tatsuya can take on Ichijo on open plains with his overwhelming power and bombardments. Tatsuya replies, saying they won't stand a chance if Ichijo uses normal tactics, but there is a leeway when he is obsessed with having an open battle with him. Tatsuya is training outside of the first high camp, maintaining a praying mantis stance as if he switched from magic to kung fu. Because of his opponent's strength, he ponders whether he can defeat Ichijo in an all-out match with no restrictions. He concludes of not being that guy enough to do so. Miyuki comes to him with a towel, saying that although she knows his opponents are strong, she believes her brother will never lose to anyone. After all, under the heavens and the earth, he alone is the honored one. He says he has no choice but to win the match to live up to his name. The finals come by, and Erika can be seen laughing her lungs out because of the funny robe Leonhard and Mikihiko put on. Tatsuya explains the purpose of the robe again, but they seem to be embarrassed wearing it. Mizuki, who is with Erika, notices spirits gathering around Mikihiko. Shinkuro and Ichijo notice also, but Ichijo acts all high and mighty, believing some meager piece of clothing ain't got that dog in it to stop them. Chairman Kudu is spotted amongst the audience, saying he is interested in the youngsters' battle. The match commences with a face-off shooting between Tatsuya and Ichijo, which seems to send steam of excitement into the crowd. Ichijo keeps on firing magic at Tatsuya while walking towards him, and Tatsuya continues to reverse the magic circle with accurate precision, like he is being assisted with the Apple Vision Pro. The shootout continues with Ichijo, while Tatsuya keeps frogging around and seems to be reaching his limit in reversing invisible air bullets from different directions. He misses one, which activates and almost erases him if he doesn't frog away in time. The sensei in the crowd notices Tatsuya using sixth sense instead of elemental sights. Tatsuya might be able to deceive every other person, but he can't deceive the eyes of Chairman Kudo. Shinkuro leaves his monolith code, leaving the last member to defend it, and runs towards his opponent's monolith code. Surprisingly for him, he is blocked by Leonhard. He then fires invisible bullets at him, but it doesn't strike him down thanks to the embarrassing robe of darkness. Mikihiko disrupts his magic with illusion magic, while Leonhard charges at him trying to end him with a boomerang. He is cut short by a bullet from Ichijo, which ends up saving Shinkuro's ass. Shinkuro takes the opportunity to fire an attack, smashing Mikihiko on the ground. Ichijo continues to act like he is him, as he casually supports Shinkuro while fighting Tatsuya. As soon as he sees Tatsuya charging at him, he worries about not ending Tatsuya with a magic attack if he fires without adjusting. Tatsuya surprises him by firing and reversing almost all the attacks sent his way, but misses too. Although it strikes him down, he activates self-restoration after sustaining fatal injuries because Ichijo broke the rule of not adjusting his magic. When Tatsuya fully recovers, he catches Ichijo by surprise, hitting him with Thanos' snapping finger, which ruptures Ichijo's eardrum and sends shockwaves throughout the stadium. Mayumi becomes flustered, asking how Tatsuya can recover while he is injured from Ichijo's illegal excessive attack. She questions Jumonji about the sort of powers Tatsuya used. Jumonji calms her ass down, saying the knowledge they possess is not the be-all of the world and magic, not the only miracle. The sensei again are seen discussing amongst themselves Tatsuya's self-restoration and him being a valuable asset of the two in the country and one of the rumored 50 in the world. They noticed him using flashcast, since fighting Ichijo was too much of an effort with a low-level CAD. He had to call up the activation sequence from memory rather than from a CAD. Yamato is the only one who can be compared to that level of speed of using flashcast. Shinkuro panics seeing that Ichijo has lost. Mikihiko then gathers the last strength in his body by biting his lips and firing a magic attack on Shinkuro, overpowering him. Team Tatsuya wins the match and the audience roars. First High screams as they finally defeat their biggest threats. Mikihiko asks Leonhard if he had any guard up when Ichijo fired an attack on him. Leonhard replies that he was too busy attacking, so he used his body, which led to what took him time to wake up. Mikihiko asks Tatsuya if he is following up with the conversation. Tatsuya apologizes for not being able to do so due to a rupture in one ear. He says he can understand them a bit by reading their lips. He looks into the crowd, staring at Miyuki, who is crying. The No-Head Dragon holds a meeting concerning Furin High. They speak of how their losses will exceed $100 million if Furin High wins the competition. No one in his right mind will sit down and watch as their opposition takes all the W, so they decide to act, even if it'll raise the people's suspicion. If there's a lack of evidence, then they can get away with it. To start, they plan to get the First High members to withdraw by force during Mirage Bat. At the campground for the competition, Tatsuya checks out the weather and calls it an ideal one for Mirage Bat. Miyuki then asks him if the enemies will attack, but he speaks vaguely of how uncertain he is if they will or they won't. Tatsuya then promises his little sis that he'll protect her no matter what happens. The Brocon blushes, and it makes us question their relationship. The Mirage Bat competition begins. From Furin High, Kobayakawa represents them. Miyuki notes how Kobayakawa is fired up for her match. Tatsuya explains that it is due to them being able to secure the win if their school wins at Mirage Bat. As soon as the girls start leaping and playing imaginary ping pong, Mizuki, a Furin High student, watches the match without using her glasses. When her friends ask her why she's doing that, the brat talks about not wanting to take her eyes off the match for even a second. She blames herself for not being able to help Tatsuya during his match. Another friend speaks up, saying that Mizuki's eyes can help them if Tatsuya's hunch about their opponents using magic is right. Despite the tense atmosphere, the red-haired bitch teases the guy with Mizuki rather than gluing her eyes to the match. As Kobayakawa jumps to cop an imaginary ball, she goes through an invisible magic field and misses her target. Immediately, her bracelet acts up and Mizuki spots it. Kobayakawa falls as a result into the water beneath her, but she's rescued just in time from becoming shark food. She's then rushed away to be treated. As Tatsuya watches her, he takes over my job as the narrator and speaks of how anyone who faces the danger of magic failing them will lead to them distrusting it. Due to this, they won't be able to wield magic at all. He then concludes that Kobayakawa might be finished, but not like I am for Ice Spice. Immediately Mizuki contacts him and informs him of what she saw happen to Kobayakawa. After thanking Mizuki, he informs Miyuki that she should get ready for her match. As the coward trembles, Tatsuya informs her that it's all right. After all, he promised to protect her. He then takes her CAD to get it checked. At the venue, while her card was being scanned, Tatsuya noticed a very minute fluctuation in it and jumped the person in charge. As the overprotective brother questions the bozo who wants to get his sister hurt, some old croak shows up, asking for the details. After Tatsuya fills Kudo in, the old man goes back to his glory days and speaks of how such a crooked method was used during the Battle of the East China Sea. He calls the virus a golden electron silkworm. This is a delayed activation sequence that invades electronic devices and causes them to malfunction. Kudo says his forces suffered greatly from the virus. He is surprised that Tatsuya can identify such. He then asks the culprit how he came across the electron silkworm. Of course, the doofus is taken into custody to be questioned. Kudo tells Tatsuya to go back to the stadium and calms him down about the situation. He hopes to meet Tatsuya again. When Tatsuya returns to meet his sister, he dotes on her and gives her the Optimus Prime pep talk to encourage her to do her best. Before she walks to the arena, she asks her elder brother if she can use an ace up her sleeve. As usual, the brother spoils her. At the arena, as soon as the Mirage bat competition starts, Miyuki activates flight magic. Rather than depending on some measly device, she leaps into the air and quickly bats all the Mirage balls, securing her place as first place. The crowd is astonished by her move and gives her a roar. Meanwhile, the no-head dragon strips themselves off any last morals they have left and plans how to stop the tourney. They plan to cause a lot of casualties by using a generator on the audience. After agreeing to use a bootleg Terminator, they remove the limiter and send it on a killing spree. Fortunately, the first person the bot tries to jump reverses it and throws the killing machine out. After a few interrogations, Yanagi, the attacked, finds out that it's a machine. Another person watching glazes Yanagi for his reflexes and watches him fight the bot. After tossing the machine like dirt, Yanagi asks his acquaintance to join him in taking down the bot. Thankfully, a lady called Fujibayashi uses her thunder needle on the bot. After the semi-finals, Miyuki meets up with her elder brother and he asks her what she'd like. Instead of the brat asking for more coaching lessons, the crazy girl asks Tatsuya to stay by her side while she sleeps. He fulfills her request and thinks of the next step the enemies will take to ruin the tourney. The following day, during the Mirage Bat final, Miyuki flies off using magic to bat some Mirage balls, but she notices other schools doing the same. As the audience from Furen High feels concerned, due to other schools being able to copy their ace, Tatsuya explains to his friends that they shouldn't worry. He says the safety device will function. Just as he predicted, the newbies using flight technology against Miyuki start to lose their breath, and the safety device kicks in. Miyuki rises to the top as she bats all the Mirage balls, earning her the victory. While this happens, Tatsuya looks furious due to not being able to protect Kobayakawa. Later that night, Furen High celebrates Miyuki's victory in Mirage Bat. Some girls talk about how Team Jumanji will cop the W in the following day's monolith code. One of them who spots Miyuki asks her for her brother, but Miyuki says he's gone to bed. Meanwhile, Tatsuya happens to be in a parking lot with a public safety officer. He gets her to send him the files of the map data and also the members involved. After she leaves, he meets with Fujibayashi and he explains who the public safety operator is to her. After talking about the importance of money, Fujibayashi wonders if she should start charging the high schooler. In a different room, Kudo speaks to one of the executives and says the reason he is there with him is because Shiba Tatsuya piqued his interest. He mentions how Tatsuya is Miya's son. He speaks of how the executive plucked Tatsuya from the Yotsubas 3 years ago. The executive says that the Yotsubas haven't let go of Tatsuya, and it makes Kudo think of it as a waste of talent. He believes that talents like Tatsuya's alongside Ichijo are what is needed for the nation. Seeing Tatsuya being held back by bodyguard duties doesn't suit him well. The executive can already tell where the senile geezer is headed, so he asks if he wants to weaken the Yotsubas. Rather than this geezer replying directly, he speaks of how the Yotsubas are indeed too powerful, and they use themselves along with their magicians as weapons. The executive cuts the chase and informs Kudo that he knows why he wants Tatsuya. He starts by saying that Tatsuya outclasses Ichijo in terms of military assets. He glazes Tatsuya by emphasizing how the teenager's spells are strategic weapons that are restricted by several layers of safety locks. He calls it cruel to give Tatsuya the responsibility of controlling all his abilities on his own. In the grand meeting of the plotters, the losers continue their antics on how to get rid of Tatsuya. They wonder who the heck the boy is and why they do not have any record of his past. While at it, Tatsuya stands on the rooftop of a skyscraper like he's Batman and casually uses a gun from a very far distance to aim at one of the bad guys. It's so funny that this child doesn't use a scope or a sniper to do the work. When the fools realize what just happened, they start to panic like chickens. Immediately, they receive a phone call. As one of the fatzos picks up the call, they learn that the marksman is from a faraway tower. While one addresses one of his androids to check the situation, the boy points to the tower where the attack came from. Tatsuya shoots down some more fodders. One of the losers picks a sniper and finally spots him. Before he can fire his gun, Tatsuya shoots the fool through the scope, blinding one of his eyes. The rest try to contact outside for help, but Tatsuya tells them that there's nothing they can do, and he is the only one they can communicate with from their room. As the fools start vanishing one by one due to being shot, the boss among them tells him to stop and promises not to interfere with the NSC any longer. With simple mind games, Tatsuya learns the person the man works for to be Richard's son, who goes public by the name Sun Gongming. Douglas Huang, who thinks he has been saved due to snitching, sees that his op still snipes those around him. Tatsuya then tells him that his little organization has drawn his wrath. Fujibayashi, who happens to be beside Tatsuya, notes how Tatsuya happens to be like a machine, and the only emotion he has is towards his sister. Tatsuya eliminates the fraud just as soon as he learns that Tatsuya is using demon light. The following day, as the students participate in the monolith code, Yanagi thanks Tatsuya for helping him catch the frauds who have been interfering in the NSC. Through the conversation, Tatsuya learns that the no-head dragons are sorcery booster suppliers. Sorcery boosters are magic amplifying devices that have been spreading among criminal organizations for the past few years. Yanagi explains that the boosters' cores are made up of magicians' cerebrums. He speaks of the case as not just morally wrong, but also a military threat. After the match ends, Tatsuya is thanked and freed to go back to his post. Mayumi speaks to Jumonji, talking about how the 10 leaders are using the competition as a way to showcase their strength, and they do not like to be undermined. Mayumi wishes Tatsuya had the blood of one of the clan members. Jumonji then promises her to leave the rest to him. At the finals, Jumonji uses a technique called phalanx from his clan to create an unbreakable shield. He then breaks through the opponents like a charging bull and wins the school's competition. As Miyuki praises Jumonji's technique, Tatsuya agrees with her, but he feels that Jumonji didn't use the phalanx in the original form. The technique's original form is more devastating than what Jumonji displayed. Later that night, at the suite, a ball is held for the students. These kids pair up and dance in the hall. As for Tatsuya, he sees Ichijo with Miyuki and goes to speak to him. After finding out that Ichijo is fine, he gives the brat the leverage to dance with his sister. Honoka, who spots Tatsuya to be free, dashes at the opportunity to be with him. Of course, the dunce doesn't know what to do, but thanks to a certain red-haired, he asks Honoka to dance with him. In the long run, he ends up dancing with a lot of girls. After a while, Jumonji meets up with him and asks him to go with him outside. Jumonji confirms that Tatsuya isn't among any of the 10 clans. He suggests that Tatsuya joins them, and even suggests Saigusa. For that, he'll need to marry her. Tatsuya then says he isn't interested in marriage, but Jumonji reminds him that he has caused a big issue by defeating the next head of the 10 clans. As he leaves Tatsuya, he tells him that he can't languish about it too long. Miyuki shows up and asks Tatsuya what he discussed with Jumonji. At Yokohama Yamashita Pier, Chiba and Inagaki chase after some illegal frauds arriving ashore from a small cargo ship. Soon, they reach the frauds and announce that they're the police. The frauds in turn open fire at them, but Chiba unleashes his Silver Surfer skills and dodges the bullets. He then takes down the frauds while Inagaki stands there like a mannequin. After the stunt, Chiba asks Inagaki to stop the ship, and he shoots at it to stop it. Impressed, Chiba leaps toward the boat and slashes the top open. However, he discovers the rest of the frauds have escaped, meaning an Orochimaru-looking figure, Joe, welcomes members of the Great Asian Alliance, emerging from a well like a bunch of illegal Mexicans. Just as they pass by him, he lets out a wicked smirk. In the Magic High School, Miyuki comes to meet Tatsuya, who is working on his research like the diligent student he is. After the pleasantries, Tatsuya tells her about his research on the Philosopher's Stone, which catalyzes spells that convert base metals into precious metals. According to his research, the spun-out Philosopher's Stone from Harry Potter can also be used to store magic sequences. After hearing about his boring research, Miyuki tells him of Ichihara's intention of talking to him in the magic geometry prep room about the forthcoming thesis competition. In the prep room, Ichihara and Isori are present, and Kazama asks Tatsuya to also participate in the thesis competition together with those two. He has been offered this opportunity due to Chiaki's accident, and also Ichihara recommended him. Ichibara informs him that she wants him on her team because they happen to be working on the same topic. After the clarification, she gives the nerd a brief rundown of the thesis competition and the deadlines they'll have to follow to ace the competition. Later during the day, Tatsuya informs his friends of his participation in the thesis competition, and they are all happy for him. However, Miyuki looks at Tatsuya with her big puppy eyes and worries about him. In front of their home, Tatsuya and Miyuki see shoes on their porch and wonder who could be the unexpected visitor. After entering, they realize it's just Sayuri, but Miyuki hides behind her brother, wary of her. Soon after, Miyuki goes to prepare dinner, leaving Tatsuya and Sayuri to talk. During the talk, Sayuri asks Tatsuya to drop out of school and help out in the research lab, but he refuses to leave his baby sister all alone. Sayuri then expresses her frustration and tells him the company can't afford to keep a talented staff member like him on the bench like Gareth Southgate. However, Tatsuya points out that he hasn't been a bench warmer and highlights his recent contribution to the company. Sayuri then tells him to help them analyze a sample that he recognizes as a relic of the Nino Magatama. He then asks how it was excavated, but after seeing her reaction, he deduces that the SDF is involved. Sayuri then tells him that the relic can store magic sequences, and with his magic, they will be able to analyze it. On the contrary, Tatsuya refuses to help and tells her to send the sample to R&D Division 3. Sayuri gets annoyed at the mention of Division 3, picks up the relic, and storms out with her arms swinging like an angry teenager. Tatsuya informs Miyuki that he's going to leave for a while to help a woman who lacks management skills. A few moments later, he goes after Sayuri on his superbike, and she is in a car chase with some crooks. Soon enough, they catch up to her and cause an accident, but luckily, she is protected by airbags. Just before they could rob her, Tatsuya arrived in time to stop them. One of them shoots a cast jam at him, but he breaks through it and takes them down easily. However, he loses his guard and gets shot like Pop Smoke. Like a boss, he heals himself, but the bodies of the crooks get loaded in their car automatically, and it drives off. Then, he uses Ultra Instinct to locate the shooter, and just like the Grinch, he cancels Christmas the shooter's ass. Back at home, he gives a detailed report of his encounter to Kazama, and he acknowledges his actions. Later, Miyuki serves Tatsuya some tea in a new apron, and he appreciates how good she looks in it. Then he tells her about Sayuri's request, and also shows her the relic. However, he assures her that he has no interest in making the relic a weapon for the military, but he wants to unravel the secrets of the system, if indeed it can store magic sequences. Meanwhile, in a strange building, the members of the Great Asian Alliance have set up a computer room like the FBI, ready to carry out their tasks. Their purpose is to steal the relic of Nino Magatama, and their leader Chen gives an order to get the relic, no matter what it takes. In the library, Tatsuya meets with his senpai, Amy, while trying to gather materials for the thesis competition. Like a couple dating in secret, she drags him into a secluded room, and they discuss the competition. Amy informs him that raising Magician's social standing is a special motivation for Ichihara in the competition, and urges him to help her as much as he can. Hearing this makes Tatsuya astounded, and he tells Amy that he has the same motivation as Ichihara. However, Amy gets jealous, and she asks him why he's not making a move on her. Tatsuya then shows her dumbass the cameras in the room, but whispers to her that he won't hesitate to partake of her if she offers himself to him, and that makes her blush. During his research, Tatsuya manages to prevent a hack into his computer, and goes over to Ono to report the incident. However, Ono tells him that she's not cyborg, therefore she can't trace the source of the attack. Tatsuya then asks her for information about organizations buying and selling classified magic documents recently. Even though she's bound by confidentiality, Ono couldn't resist Tatsuya's charm, and she tells him what he wants to know. Later that day, Tatsuya tells Isori about the cyber attack and how they went after documents about magic theory. While thinking it might be related to the competition, Isori suggests telling Ichihara about it, and Tatsuya agrees. Suddenly, Mari and Kanon open the door like SWAT. Mari then tells Tatsuya about the need for bodyguards protecting members participating in the competition, since they'll be using valuable materials, which makes them targets for spies. However, Tatsuya knows he won't go down to a bunch of losers, so he tells Mari that he won't need bodyguards. Outside a store, Tatsuya senses someone watching him, and before he can say anything, Kanon thinks it's a spy and rushes after the person. However, the female spy drops a light capsule, which blocks Kanon's vision, and she hops on a scooter. Kanon then tries to use her magic, but Tatsuya shoots it off while Isori holds down the spy's scooter with a spell. Unfortunately, she has a nitro boost installed in the scooter and was able to escape thanks to that. After escaping, the female spy gets put in a van and her scooter is abandoned. In the Asian Alliance's computer room, Chen asks about the female spy and he gets told she has beef with Tatsuya, who is related to Sayuri, their target. He then asks them to give her a lot of support and a weapon. Also, he asks them to add First High School to their list of targets and then orders Lu to take down anyone sniffing around. At school, Mitsuki tells the group that she feels a creepy gaze around the school, and Mikihiko supports her suspicion. He then elaborates that someone must have evoked a Shikigami in the school, but it is a different spell, and he can't get a grasp on it. Hearing that it's a different spell, Tatsuya asks if it's possible it's different from their country's ancient magic, and Mikihiko agrees. Outside the city, Chiba and Inagaki decide to get more information, and they drive to a cafe known as Rotor Wald, whose owner happens to be a know-it-all. On the way home, Tatsuya discusses his role in the thesis competition with his friends, and they decide to stop at a cafe for some tea. Unknown to them, they're been followed by a strange man. In Rotor Wald, while getting coffee, Chiba and Iganaki see a beautiful woman sitting across from them. Since they were a bunch of cowards, the lady approached them and introduced herself as Fujibayashi Kyoto. In the cafe, Erika and Leo give an excuse to go outside, but they confront their stalker instead. The man then tries to take the coward's way out by screaming he's about to be robbed, but it doesn't work due to a barrier already put up by Mikihiko. He then decides to fight his way through, and he manages to take down Leo, and also puts up a good fight against Erika. Unfortunately, he gets caught slacking, and Leo pins him to the ground. They then question him, but he tells them he's not their enemy. He then tells them his name is Jiro Marshall, and his job is to monitor magic high school students to ensure that no cutting-edge magic technology falls into the hands of the East. Suddenly, he points a gun at them, which forces Mikihiko to take down the barrier. Before Jiro leaves, he warns them to be vigilant of their surroundings, and he disappears through a smoke bomb. In Rotor Wald, Kyoto gets called while discussing with Chiba. She then goes to her vehicle to erase traces of ancient magic left on the surveillance system by Tatsuya's friends. Meanwhile, Jiro gets attacked in an alley by Lu Gonghu, who knocks him out and sets his ass on fire. At the school grounds, Tatsuya and his thesis mates demonstrate the first phase of their project while everyone else watches. Fortunately, the first phase is a success, but Mibu sees a girl in the crowd holding a device and chases after her, like she stole her sandwich. After the wild chase, the girl eventually stops, and Mibu accuses her of working with spies due to the device she was holding. Mibu advises her to cut ties with the spies, but the girl, Chiaki, refuses. She then drops a light capsule for distraction. Chiaki then tries to escape, but Leo launches a spear attack on her like Brock Lesnar, and she passes out. At the infirmary, Dr. Asuka assures Leo and Kanon that Chiaki will eventually wake up on her own. At the exhibition grounds, Sekimoto argues with Leo and Erika for wandering around, but Kanon steps in to quench the dispute. After settling the dispute, she leaves with Isori, but Sekimoto sees a tab displaying the practical theme of the thesis. The smug-looking fraud gets inquisitive and approaches the tab, but Ichihara closes the device and points out his previous declaration of not having interest in her practical theme. He then leaves angrily, like a sore loser. Meanwhile, Erika and Leo walk with each other, and Erika asks him to follow her somewhere if he doesn't have any plans. At the infirmary, Conan and Isori see Dr. Asuka restraining Chiaki, and they ask her to be put on the bed. After being asked why she tried to steal their data, Chiaki confesses that her objective was to rewrite the program and disable the magic device for the presentation. However, all she wanted was for Tatsuya to panic because she blames him for her sister, Koharu, ending up like that. Isori then tries to convince her otherwise, but she starts to act crazy and continues to blame Tatsuya. In a vehicle, Erika and Leo discuss their encounter with Jiro and realize that the female spy is a decoy. Now they must find the mastermind, and Erika points out that Leo doesn't have a move that can kill his opponent for sure. She then offers to teach him a kill move using the secret sword, Usuba Kagaru. On the way back from the presentation, Tatsuya finds out about Chiaki's grudge against him from his friends. However, he suggests leaving her be and not involving her sister in the case. This will help them prevent the case from escalating even further. In an enclosed restaurant, Chen is informed by Joe about the spy's failure. Joe then assures him that she knows nothing of their identity and there's no danger of information leaks. While Chen believes Joe, Lu gives Joe a suspicious look and doesn't seem to trust the snake one bit. The next day, Tatsuya informs his friends of Erika and Leo's absence, and a bunch of pervy thoughts run through their minds. However, they were not that far off because Leo had just seen Erika in a bath towel at her parents' dojo. She gets embarrassed and calls him a filthy pervert, peeping Tom. During training, Erika hits Leo and blames him for not quickly grasping the technique. She then tries to involve Tatsuya, but Leo refuses to involve Tatsuya and claims he will master it himself. He then solidifies the cloth with his magic and continues training. Meanwhile, at the high school practice grounds, a mock battle is going on. Jumonji ends up destroying all the participants in the mock battle except Mikihiko, who hides in the forest. Soon, he realizes he's been discovered and uses his ultra instinct to pinpoint Jumonji's location. Following that, he sends an earthquake at him and runs off. Unfortunately, his weak-ass antics didn't do shit to Jumonji, but he finds the technique interesting. After the battle, Mikihiko is asked to stay for lunch at the dojo, and he sees Mitsuki entering the dojo. They then sit beside each other and eat together. For some reason, they both start to blush like dummies and steal glances at each other. She then runs out of the dojo embarrassed, and Mikihiko follows her apologizing. During the chase, he bumps into a figure in the dark but continues running. In Kokunoeji Temple, Tatsuya and Miyuki see a monk about the relic of the Nino Magatama. However, he tells them both to return it as soon as possible because it's being targeted. The low-budget Saitama also advises them to be careful when facing the enemy so that they don't lose their bearing. On the way back from the temple, Tatsuya tells Miyuki that they're being followed by a crow and tells her to hold tight while he zooms off. At the development center, the lab is under a cyber attack and Ushiyama supervises the damage control. Then, Tatsuya and Miyuki arrive and they are briefed about the attack. Subsequently, Tatsuya informs Ushiyama of his intention to keep the relic at the lab. He then senses the crow on top of the building and he destroys it, severing its connection to the Asian Alliance. However, Chen doesn't care because he now knows where Tatsuya is keeping the relic. Following that, the heartless bastard orders Lu to get rid of their female spy before Joe meets with her. At his home, Tatsuya assures Koharu through a call that her sister's action will be swept under the carpet. After the call, Tatsuya tells Miyuki that Koharu has sent over Chiaki's phone logs so they can use them to find the spies. At the research club, Tatsuya gets welcomed by Pixie and he puts her on suspended mode while he does some debugging on the systems. Suddenly, Tatsuya gets lightheaded and immediately knows he's been drugged with sleeping gas. He then tells Pixie to activate the forced ventilation system and stay in monitor mode without eliminating the rescuers. A few moments later, a person enters the room and goes over to Tatsuya. After confirming he's asleep, the person tries to steal the program but gets caught by Konan. The bloody thief turns out to be Sekimoto, who happens to be a spy. Before he could defend himself, Konan knocked him out swiftly. In the hospital, Mari apologizes to Shu for dragging him along, but he doesn't mind. Meanwhile, on a different floor, Joe sees Lu after coming out of the elevator, and he hits the riot alarm. This makes Shu and Mari leap toward Chiaki's room. However, Shu gets there first and sees Lu, who also recognizes him. They then engage in a fierce battle in which they are evenly matched. Subsequently, Shu gets an upper hand through Lu's move, which enables him to land a good hit on him. Lu sees Mari behind him, and she sends an attack toward him. Although he countered the attack, he still got hit by it. He then jumps off the floor to escape. Shu, on the other hand, also got hit by Mari's attack, but he assures her that he's fine. He then tells her that Lu is a magician working with the Asian Alliance Special Ops Forces. Later that day, Tatsuya briefs Kyoto about Lu's attack and sends her the footage recorded. After their conversation, Kyoto informs Chiba about her plans to eliminate their threats and how she'll also need his help in doing so. Meanwhile, Chen tells Lu that smug-face Sekimoto has been detained and he must dispose of him immediately. The next day, Tatsuya asks for permission to visit the detention center, but Konan refuses his request. However, he insists on telling him the reason, but she snaps at him, telling him not to give her any more trouble while she's swamped up. Mari, who's also in the room, offers to go with Tatsuya to prevent him from causing trouble, and Konan accepts. At the hospital, Joe visits Chiaki with flowers and uses his magic to wipe off any memories of him in her head. Subsequently, Tatsuya and Mari arrive at the detention center. Mayumi then takes Tatsuya to the viewing room while Mari interrogates the smug-faced spy. During the interrogation, he confesses that his job was to look into Tatsuya's belongings to find the relic. Suddenly, they hear an emergency alarm ringing, and after they come out of the room, they see Lu charging towards them. Mari then asks Tatsuya to protect Mayumi while she faces Lu. The fight begins, and Lu charges at Mari, but Mayumi sends a series of ice attacks at him. He dodges them, but Mari forces him back with her tool. Then, he uses his magic to deflect Mayumi's ice attacks and turns invisible while he swoops past Mari. However, he meets a deadly attack launched by Tatsuya, and he gets injured badly. Seeing his vulnerability, Mayumi sends her ice at him, while Mari finishes him off with her magical tool. Later in the night, Kyoto tells Tatsuya that they have been able to raid most of the Asian Alliance ops, but their leader, Chen, managed to escape. After the briefing, Tatsuya decides to get a shut-eye, but his creepy sister starts to stare at his face and leans in for a kiss. However, Tatsuya wakes up and prevents a whole hell of a mistake. The perverted sister then gets startled and runs to her room in embarrassment. Then, Tatsuya comes to meet her in her room and touches her face. He then tells her not to worry about him because he'll always keep himself safe. After he leaves, she starts fawning over his touch after having his ass handed to him by Kyoto. Chen runs to Joe for help. Joe then gives him information about Kyoto's organization's plans to transfer Lu to another location. However, in exchange for his help, Joe gives Chen the condition that Chinatown is spared of any harm. Even though Chen agrees with his condition, he tells Joe that the high school is located near Chinatown, and also their target is the magicians heading to the thesis competition with their research data. Hence, there might be skirmishing that will be unavoidable. At school, Tatsuya and his friends discuss their plans for the thesis competition the next day. Leo offers to help him move the demo device, but he tells him the school already provided a bus. He then assures them that cheering him from the stands is enough, and if any incident happens, there's no crime in letting the audience pick off the pieces. In Tachikawa Hospital, Ichihara comes to Chiaki's ward to speak to her. She tells her no matter what her immature ass does to Tatsuya, he won't take the time to sneer or sympathize with a loser like her. However, she is capable of surpassing him in magic engineering due to her high score in the first semester exams. She then tells Chiaki that Tatsuya isn't very adept with hardware, and if she can hold on to her feeling of bitterness, she will find a way to accomplish it. Before leaving, Ichihara invites her to attend the thesis competition. On the way back, Hanzo asks her if she's alright, but she tells him they need to make sure that the school reaps the benefits of Chiaki's gift as a magical engineer. Later in the night, Chiba treats Kyoto to a drink at an expensive restaurant. He then thanks her for helping him wrap up his case, but she invites him to the thesis competition the next day. However, it's not a date, because she told him to bring in his subordinates and even weapons, just to be on the safer side. The next day at the convention center, Ono sees Kyoto walking into a room and takes a picture of her. In the room, Kyoto exchanged pleasantries with Tatsuya and Miyuki. She then tells Tatsuya that his mobile suit has been completed and will be delivered to him later that night. Also, she informs him that their problems might not yet be over. She then gives him a memory card and tells them to be prepared for anything. On their way to the auditorium, Tatsuya and Miyuki meet Ichiju and Tomitsuka. After briefing and talking with them, they leave for the auditorium. In the auditorium, Erika approaches Tatsuya and he asks her Leo's whereabouts. She then throws a bit of a tantrum about not being his babysitter. She then shows them Mikihiko and Mizuki in the front row, acting like a newlywed couple on their honeymoon. After a brief talk with Ono, Kyoto receives new information about Lu's escape, but due to the weapons test scheduled for the next day, her team is ready to mobilize and will be arriving at the center soon. At the security headquarters, Hattori and Kirihara brief Jumonji about their findings on Sekimoto and Chiaki. After that, Jumonji asks them to monitor the perimeter of the convention center. However, Hattori points out the existence of foreigners in the center, and Kirihara also supports him. Due to this, Jumonji tells them to wear bulletproof vests and notifies the rest of the security members to do the same. In the auditorium, the thesis presentation begins, and the students have to listen to 30 minutes of Ichihara talking about her boring research about magic and other non-existent shit. While the presentation was going on, Joe received a message from his crew about setting their plan in motion as scheduled. 30 minutes of boring talk after, Ichihara finishes her presentation, and the audience applauds her, although half of them didn't understand what the hell she yapped about. Following that, one of the team members presenting next approaches Tatsuya and commends their research. However, he promises Tatsuya that they will beat him this time and win the award for the most boring thesis. Sadly, his dumb dream is going to come true, because they suddenly hear a loud bang in the auditorium. At the Yamashita Pier control building, a bus containing explosives bursts through the gates like it's being driven by a woman, enters the building, and blows up. Immediately, Chiba receives word of the incident and decides to go to the building. He then informs Kyoto of his intentions, but she chooses to remain in the convention center. On the way, Chiba gets word from Inagaki that rockets have been fired from a landing craft disguised as a cargo ship. After that, Chiba requests for mobilization of some soldiers and also sends over some weapons to Erika. At the auditorium, Tatsuya deduces that a grenade must have exploded near the front entrance, and judging from the data he received from Kyoto earlier, it must be the work of foreigners. Suddenly, a group of men with guns barges in blazing, and they demand them to put their devices on the floor. However, they make a mistake by threatening Tatsuya, who uses his Superman heat ray vision to count the number of intruders in the building. One of the intruders shoots at him, but he catches the bullet like Neo in the Matrix. The intruder then switches to a knife fight, but he loses his arm in the process. After this, the security team apprehends the rest of the intruders and ties them up like slaves. Afterward, Tatsuya's friends arrive, and they head out to deal with the problem, but Tatsuya gets stopped by Shinkuro, the previous booster. Shinkuro tries to find out how Tatsuya could use that technique to defeat the intruder, but Tatsuya just ignores him because he doesn't have time for a flimsy debate. Outside, the neighboring buildings are being bombed, and the guards are doing their best to hold back the attacks while evacuating people at the same time. In the auditorium, Mayumi asks Azusa to use her powers to calm everyone down and assures her that she'll take responsibility. Afterward, Azusa uses her Robin Hood magic shot to calm everyone in the room. Then, Mayumi addresses everyone and explains the situation to them. She then tells everyone to evacuate to the shelter through the tunnel or flee to the Mizuhi Pier. At the center's main entrance, Dumbass Leo tries to go in head first, but luckily, Tatsuya drags his stupid ass back and tells him the enemy uses anti-magician high-speed bullets. To render the intruder's guns useless, Miyuki holds hands with Tatsuya and casts her ice spell on their guns. Then Tatsuya and friends slice up the intruders like pizza, making them run away like a bunch of cowards. Following that, Tatsuya suggests looking for more intel about the intruder, and Shizuku tells them about the VIP conference room. There, they can access all kinds of information, and she knows the passcode to the room. In the conference room, they realize that they will be captured by the enemy if they stay in the auditorium for too long, and the most realistic option is to escape to the shelter. Tatsuya suggests going above ground and tells them he has to destroy the demo devices. In the auditorium backstage, Mayumi tries to prevent their data from being stolen by deleting them. Soon, Jumonji arrives, and Tatsuya expresses his concerns about going to the shelter using the underground tunnel. After hearing this, Jumonji sends Hattori and Sawaki after Azusa, who had already taken other students to the underground tunnel. He then decides to patrol the area to make sure there are no more intruders. Hisori then asks Tatsuya to take care of the devices, and Mari suggests meeting in the green room to decide their next move. Meanwhile, a quagmire-looking fellow smokes a cigarette and receives an order to be carried out. In the green room, the students deduce that the intruders must be after the Magic Association's main database because all the crucial data is being centrally managed in Kyoto and Yokohama. They then receive word from Azusa telling them Tatsuya's instincts were dead on, but Hattori also assures them that the enemy's force is small and they'll be able to drive them away soon. However, Tatsuya uses his heat ray vision once again to see the quagmire fellow driving a bus toward their building at top speed. He then leaves the bus with his magic gun, and Quagmire comes out flying. Outside, Jumonji sees Tatsuya's work, but rockets suddenly start flying toward the building. He then uses his powers to eliminate the rockets in a jiffy. Then, an armored tank belonging to JSDF 101 drives toward him, and a man introduces himself as Sanada Shigeru. In the green room, Kyoto and Kazama give the students a rundown on the current situation. Due to the special circumstances, Kazama orders Tatsuya to mobilize, being a special officer. Before leaving, Miyuki holds Tatsuya, and he kneels in front of her. She then kisses him on the forehead, which releases a crazy amount of magical energy in the air. After that, she bows and tells him he now has free reign. Outside the convention center parking lot, Ichiju summons his inner Homelander and brutally lays waste to the intruders with his magic gun, and this comes as a surprise to the rest of his teammates. In the tunnels, Kirihara moves like Spider-Man and kicks the butt of some of the intruders. He then gets support from Tomitsuka and Hattori, who use their magic to destroy the intruders. Afterward, Azusa leads the people toward the shelter. Outside the building, Jumonji asks for a car so he can go to the Kanto branch of the Magic Association. Kyoto grants him the requests and orders 2 more sergeants to accompany him. Underground, Azusa and others reach the exit, but while she runs across happily, the top of the tunnel gets crushed. Luckily, Suzura was able to hold it for a while to allow everyone to cross over to the shelter. Outside the center, Kyoto and the students get ambushed by some machine, but they get iced quickly by Mayumi and Miyuki. After reaching Sakuragacho Station, they discover that the underground tunnel has been destroyed, but Mikihiko confirms that Azusa and the others are safe. Now that they can no longer escape to the shelter, Mayumi suggests calling for a helicopter, which will evacuate everyone who got left behind. Then, Chiba arrives and tells Kyoto to rejoin the main unit while he protects the students. He then gives Erika the weapon he got for her. In Yamashita Pier, contact with the operatives heading toward the convention center has been lost, as well as the vertical tanks on the way to secure the shelter. The commanders then ordered the mechanized unit to be sent ashore immediately. Tatsuya arrives at Hodoya and suits up like a broke Black Panther. Kazama then asks him to join Yanagi's unit, and he flies up to the sky. There, he sees a tiny craft and cunningly destroys it. This causes a reaction at Yamashita Pier, and they wonder what the hell is going on. Meanwhile, at the parking lot, Ichiju and Shinkuro finish off the remaining intruders, but Ichiju insists on going to the Kanto branch of the Magic Association. Shinkuro tries to follow him, but he tells him to lead the others to safety instead. At the station, the students have to wait for about 20 minutes for the helicopter to arrive. However, they're sure if the enemy comes, they will be sure to drive them out. Soon enough, giant robots start attacking them, but they're no match for the magicians, who cut them open with their various weapons. In another location, Tatsuya meets with Yanagi, and Yanagi tells him that their enemy is the Asian Alliance due to the sorcerer booster they found. He then tells him about the helicopter sent to get the civilians out of the station. Meanwhile, at the station, the rescue helicopter arrives, but strange bugs appear around it. Shizuku tries to destroy them with her gun, but they keep coming back. The bugs then try to latch onto the helicopter, but Tatsuya and the rest of the flying jats come to the rescue. After a few more minutes, more helicopters arrive, and all the civilians are evacuated. However, while Tatsuya reports on the evacuation, one of the foolish intruders tries to bomb the helicopters. Without stress, Tatsuya turns him into a memory of the past. Tatsuya then flies away, and Chiba wonders who he is. At the Kanto branch, the intruders use phantom spells to summon creatures, which forces the security team to retreat. However, Jumonji arrives and crushes the intruders and their lame summoning jutsu. Meanwhile, in Yokohama Chinatown, Ichiju faces a similar situation, but he tries to find the caster. He suffocates some of the intruders using a spell and deduces that the unaffected one is the cast. By the power vested upon his gun, he turns the spellcaster into mashed potato. At the station, Mayumi sends down ropes from the helicopter to rescue Erika, Mikihiko, Mizuki, Leo, and Miyuki. On the other hand, Kirihara and others are still fighting intruders on the ground. After a while, the rescue chopper arrives, but before they can be rescued, they get ambushed by the intruders. As a result, Kirihara loses his leg, and Isori gets hit with a bullet. Afterward, Miyuki turns the intruders to ice, and Tatsuya flies down to save Isori, and he points his magic gun at Isori. With his powers, he restores Isori's health and Kirihara's leg. He then flies away afterward. Near Yokohama Bay Hills Tower, Tatsuya and the flying soldiers attack the intruders and their giant robots. Unfortunately for the intruders, no matter how many of the soldiers they hit, Tatsuya keeps bringing them back, and within a few minutes, the flying soldiers reduce them to dust. At Yamashita Pier, the commander of the intruders is about to wet his pants after realizing his troops have been wiped out by a group of flying soldiers. Meanwhile, Jumonji is also laying waste to the intruders near the Kanto branch, causing them to retreat. In Chinatown, Ichiju stands across a gate and asks for it to be open, or else they'll be considered in league with the intruders. Afterward, the gate is opened, and he is welcomed by the sly snake, Joe. Joe then offers him some of the intruders he has caught, and claims he's not in league with them. Ichiju then thanks Joe for his assistance, and Joe smirks. In the chopper, Isori and Kirihara can't believe what had just happened to them, and they ask Miyuki if Tatsuya used healing magic on them. She then tells them that the spell is called Regrowth, which allows Tatsuya to go back in time 24 hours and make a full copy of the victim before sustaining injury. Then, it is overwritten as a magic sequence, and by doing this, the victim is restored to his state before the injury occurs. Due to this power, Tatsuya can restore anything, but it doesn't allow him to wield other types of magic freely, making him unbalanced. After hearing about the powers, they all think it's magnificent, but Miyuki tells them it's not. This is because Tatsuya feels 150 times the pain of any victim he heals. However, in a bus, Chen and the rest of the Asian Alliance ops, including Lu, get ready for their Plan B and head toward the Magic Association branch office. Suddenly, Mizuki senses them and tells the others about the beast-like aura she sees close to the Magic Association. While gliding over the building, they see Lu laying waste to the security. Mayumi, Mari, Leo, and Erika decide to take him on. On the ground, Lu gets ambushed by Mari, and he's happy to see her once again. He then runs toward her, but he's attacked by Leo. He dodges his strikes and sends him flying. Erika then tries to avenge her boyfriend, but he sends her flying too. However, Mayumi turns out to be his arch-nemesis, and she sends ice into his throat through deception. Meanwhile, Chen enters the Magic Association branch using his hacking device, but it suddenly gets chilly, thanks to Miyuki. Chen then wonders why his spell isn't working on her, but Miyuki informs him that she's already been warned not to lose her bearing. After a bit of pep talk, she turns the helpless brother into an ice sculpture. At Hill's Tower, the flying soldiers engage in another battle with the intruders, and they come out victorious. Afterward, the intruders run away like scared bitches, and Yanagi attempts to launch a direct assault on their ship. However, Yanagi receives instructions from Kyoto not to attack the enemy ship because it is equipped with hydrazine fuel batteries, which when damaged might cause adverse effects on marine life. The flying crew is then asked to fall back and return to base. At Hill's Tower's rooftop, Kyoto briefs Kazama about the sweep operation, as well as the situation of the evacuation shelter that got buried and how they'll soon be rescued. Kazama then gives Shigeru to unlock the third eye seal. He does that and brings out a weapon, Material Burst, and he asks Tatsuya to sink the intruder's ship using that weapon. With Kyoto's guidance and his Superman vision, Tatsuya activates Material Burst, which swallows up the intruder ship in a bright light that can be seen by everyone, including the students. Afterward, Kyoto receives word that the Asian Alliance is now gathering in Genhai Naval Port, and they have been asked to deal with them at the Geojedo base. While Tatsuya is away, Miyuki informs her aunt, Maya, about his whereabouts. She in turn asks Miyuki and Tatsuya to stop by the mansion sometime, and Miyuki accepts her invitation. In Tsushima base, Kazama briefs his team members about their enemy's location and how they are mobilized. To annihilate their enemy, Tatsuya is required to use Material Burst. After pinpointing the enemy ship, Tatsuya activated Material Burst, and it destroyed the enemy ship like the atomic bomb did Hiroshima. Afterward, Kyoto reports that the enemy has been completely obliterated.